All right, it is time. We've been waiting for this for quite a while. We are now officially live for Podapolooza 2021. I am Justin Mason, and I am the lead fantasy writer and analyst at friendsoffantasybenefits.com. I'm joined by a fantastic panel, the most internationally diverse panel I think we can have on Podapalooza in the fantasy baseball industry. That means I am joined by a bunch of guys who do not reside in the United States of America, all coming together to help raise money for Mental Health America. Joining me now is Darius Austin, Jamie Steed, Peter Pratt, and Mr. Rototrix. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
That is definitely not my surname, Justin.
Yes, I know, but it's
such awkwardness. It's like, what's his name? What's his name?
I totally, it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm just waking up, and you put Rototrix, that's what you get announced as.
Yeah,
I think you should change it, Ryan.
Yeah. It's Ryan Owen. Right? So, Ryan, why don't you start? Tell everybody a little bit about yourself and where you can reach on social media.
Great to be here, Justin. Yeah, this is a nice way to kick this off and to get people involved and thinking about mental health as well and donating. So well done for organizing. At Rototrix on Twitter. And my name is Ryan Owen, even if Justin doesn't know it. And I am obsessed with statistics. I watched American football first. I was an Eagles fan. And as you can see, I stayed with Philadelphia. And then I just became completely entranced with this idea that what are all these numbers at the bottom of the screen? And what does each one mean? And how does each one affect each other? And baseball just quickly became a love. And once we added fantasy baseball into that, Excel spreadsheets are another joy of mine. I am not, amongst the people that are listening and we're speaking to today, I'm very normal, but amongst the masses of society, I'm perhaps not that normal because I enjoy it and I enjoy sitting there crunching numbers and, trying to get a competitive edge on people in fantasy baseball. And so we do the Roto Brits podcast as well. So myself and Mr. Peter Pratt, who's here, have started up a UK-based fantasy show. And that's us.
And I just listened to the Roto Brits podcast for the first time because of the podcast bracket. So, definitely go and check out the podcast bracket. It's going to be going on, I believe, or continue on to the second round next week at Baseball Pods. But go so you can find new pods. And every year I try to listen to every single pod that I've never listened to before. I've found some really cool ones. Loved your guys's. Going to subscribe and continue to listen. Peter, you're the other half of the Roto Brit. So why don't you introduce yourself, tell people where you could be reached on social media and talk about what you do in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the invite, Justin. Looking forward to, great to be in the leadoff spot for this. This is a privilege. As Ryan mentioned, we've been working on the Roto Brits podcast now this is our second season, albeit it was curtailed last year. We had every intention of going weekly. It's fair to say lockdowns got in the way, COVID got in the way. So we're back though. We're back and we're excited for this year. On the flip side as well. So apart from the fantasy side, as you'll see in my name at the bottom there, also a big Marlins fan. So I also run the Miami Marlins UK Twitter page, if that's even right, or handle. But that's been awesome. I've been involved with the Marlins media actually since last year, so that's been great. So I'm involved with regular calls with the Zoom room, etc., which have been a lot of fun and great to have that access specifically with the Marlins. So yeah, really for those who haven't listened to Roto Brits though specifically, you're right to call out though, Justin. It's that bracket idea and concept is awesome and a great way to find new pods. For those who haven't yet got around to Roto Brits, effectively it's myself and Ryan. Plus, we're getting into weekly guests now, which is great. And I steer it. Ryan, I would describe as the chief analyst. I am effectively a glorified editor. And saw all the technical bits, but I steer it. and I look to extract information out of Ryan and the other guests we have, which has been a lot of fun. And we've had some great guests the last couple of weeks. So yeah, that's about it. I think go and check it out. We're committing to weekly pods every Thursday evening.
Awesome. Also joining us is Jamie Steed. Jamie, welcome.
Thank you, Justin. Thanks for having me.
Remind everybody where you can reach on social media and then talk about what you do in the industry.
Just search me. My Twitter handle is baseball_Jimbo, and I'm writing over at Podapolooza at the moment. So I'm with the team over there now in my second year. So the first year was a bit of a unfortunate one, but it's good to sort of like get down to proper sort of full season, hopefully, analysis over the last few weeks and couple of months. And this, as I said, second year with them. Back in the UK, I'm a big Yankees fan. As some of the crap behind me you might be able to see. And also I help run the Essex Arrows Baseball Club in the UK, based just outside of London. So we've got a National League team, a AAA team and a AA team for next season, because the team I play for, they won the single A title last season, so they're moving up to AA. So plenty to keep me occupied outside of fantasy when I sort of do get an off season, and I've got other things to keep me occupied baseball related.
Nice. So what's it like working for a baseball club in the UK?
Well, it's voluntary. There's no paid, other than a couple of positions. Even the national governing bodies volunteers. So there's no financial value to it, but it is so rewarding sort of getting the guys on a Sunday together playing teams from, I'll say it's pretty regionalised in the UK, so we don't have to travel too far, but it is good to get guys out there playing baseball, talking about it pre-game, in-game, during game. It's a cracking atmosphere every Sunday. Can get a bit feisty. Some teams, some games, some players take it a little bit far, but on the whole, it is a great experience in the UK. Sort of, it's just the amateurish side of it, but there's so much professionalism growing into the game over the last few years. It's starting to expand nicely.
They're throwing behind people's heads in Essex on a Sunday. Is that what you're saying? They're sort of like the fastballs are coming in high and inside.
Yeah, only when I'm pitching, and I don't intend to hit someone. And my fastball couldn't break a pane of glass, so it's not exactly threatening in any way, shape, or form. But it has been known for people to get deliberately hit, even at the single A level.
I love it.
Yeah. That's great. That brings a little bit of the American game over to England. Also joining us is Darius Austin. Darius, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, great to be here. Pete sort of made us sound very good, like we're in the leadoff slot, like we're Starling Marte or something. I sort of thought we're like the indie band that's playing while everybody's getting their drinks. Not everyone's turned up at the gig yet, That's where we're at here.
You're the openers, right? Yeah. Darius, let everybody know where you can be reached on social media, and then talk a little bit about what you do in the industry.
So you can find me at DariusA64 on Twitter. I write for Baseball Prospectus, so you can find all of my fantasy content over there. I also administer the depth charts there, so if you hate all the playing time that we're projecting, that's my fault. And I'm also with the Bat Flips and Nerds crew. We've had Pete on before, certainly. We're doing a lot of season preview stuff at the moment, got a lot of beat writers coming on, which is exciting. Sneak preview, I'm talking to Levi Weaver later, and we've got Susan Sluster on Monday as well, a couple of good ones. It's going to be a lot more, so do check all of that out. And yeah, if you just want a lot of British content, then definitely get Roto Brits and Bat Flips and Nerds in your podcast feed.
Definitely. I've been listening to Bat Flips and Nerds for quite a while, ever since that Absolute Bunts podcast went away.
we don't like to talk about that. Those guys, you can't count on them.
I've kind of taken over their role in like the fantasy baseball, area, doing like the beginners podcast with my wife. So, shout out to them for the great content they used to do. But I do love Bat Flips and Nerds. I love the Roto Brits podcast. So I'm glad you guys are all here with me. Let's talk about what it's like to be a fantasy player in England or abroad. People, I don't think, people often complain, like in TGFBI, like, oh, this person's taken forever to make their pick, and they're not giving the thought that, it might be the middle of the night there. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, something like that, over in England right now. I'm not really good. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's 7 o'clock in the morning my time. So, how, Darius, do you guys balance doing like a slow draft in the middle of the night when, the main picking hours might be when you're asleep?
Well, we've been talking about this a lot because a lot of us do seem to have ended up with pick 15 in TGFBI, which is perhaps not ideal from some perspectives, but it does make things a lot easier in that regard because obviously when you're on the turn, you have those big gaps between picks. Certainly one of the years, I think I remember picking 7 or 8 and it was a nightmare because I knew like every night when I went to sleep, there was a pretty good chance my slot was coming up overnight. And often we're going to bed like right when people are finishing work in the US. So the draft will be like moving really slowly all day. And then suddenly like you'll get up and like 23 picks have been made and you're like everyone's been sat waiting for you for 3.5 hours. So it is challenging. You just have to kind of look ahead. I think, there's a bit of, really setting a good queue. There's a bit of just, especially when you're on those ends, taking the guys you want when you want them. But it's not ideal. It would be nice, obviously, if we could be there live and get a bit more input onto it. But we learn to cope. I'm pretty good at setting like auto draft picks now. I've got pretty good strategy down because I've spent like the last 10 years annoying Americans with my really inconvenient draft times. So you do get used to it, and everyone's like, oh, you can't auto pick, but it's something that we definitely have to get used to if we just want to get drafts done.
Jamie, what do you do? Do you like set alarms in the middle of the night to wake up?
Yeah, I mean, I think overnight it's about 6, 7 a.m. local time when the draft room closes overnight for the TGFBI draft. So it's sort of time I thought, well, if you've got 4 hours for your pick, then I can just check it at 3 a.m. So it might just be an alarm going off at 3 a.m. lazily looking at your phone, or it's not your pick, so I can sleep through till the morning. Thankfully, working from home's made it a lot easier because I can roll out of bed at 10 to 9 and still be on time for work. So that's an added bonus, I think, for this year at least. And it is a case of setting the auto queue, your queue, hoping not to need it. But, it's a fail-safe, really fallback option if you need it. But you can sort of judge predominantly what's going to happen, when your pick's going to be. You get a sense of it. So by the time it hits like midnight local time, if I've just picked an hour ago, if I'm picking at 8 like this year, there's a good chance it's not going to fall back round to me at any time. So I'll feel safe enough to put a couple of guys in the queue, go to bed, wake up, and it's fine. It's quite funny because I normally, when you wake up in the morning, obviously it's not until gone lunchtime the draft room opens again for us, but we're still able to pick. So it sort of gives us a bit of an advantage in that regard, that you've got the morning to have a little scour through, check what's happened, make your pick, and there's not so much. You're not timed, you're not pressured, you're not worrying about, I've got a meeting, am I going to make it? It has a little benefit in that regard, but you do sacrifice some sleep pattern for the week or two it's running.
Ryan, what about you? Like, what are you doing in order to like not miss out on picks? Because there's nothing more frustrating than like waking up and realizing, oh my God, I auto drafted and I didn't get the guy I wanted. So do you like set a queue of like 50 players, or are you just risking it?
No, I'm a total control freak, Justin, and there's no way that I'm having an auto pick in the middle of an important draft. So the alarms are set at times that I know I'm definitely not going to miss on anything. And like Jamie says, there is a sort of sweet spot, because if your pick comes up at 1 minute past 3, at 7 a.m., it's actually gonna stop until 12, as he says. So there's that sweet spot between about 2:45 and 3:05 in the morning where you can wake up and check on things. And I do remember sitting in my kitchen on one occasion last year during TGFBI from about 3 o'clock until 3:30, sort of deliberating on something. And yeah, it was great. It's fun. What's wrong with that? It's fun. What's more fun than running downstairs in your boxers and picking like Kirby Yates or something? Like, just what you want to be thinking about at the middle of the night.
What about you, Peter? Like, it's got to be difficult to balance all of that. I mean, I have enough difficulty balancing my schedule and drafts and things like that. If I had to be setting an alarm for, 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning to make sure I'm not missing a pick, I'd be pretty cranky all the time.
Well, listen, it was my first year last year in TGFBI, and I was at the back. I was at a 14 or 15 slot, which I think, as the guys mentioned, does make it a bit easier when you're in the middle. I'm 9 this year, so I'm going to be. It's going to be interesting, let's say, and let's see if I use any alarms. I tell you what I did though last year. I had a load of guys queued up. Back end of the draft, actually, had load of guys queued up. My main guy wanted. The guys will laugh at this, but I wanted Lewis Brinson. I wanted it. And when I woke up in the morning, it had auto-drafted. My queue had been decimated, including Brinson. Brinson had gone. Someone else had taken him. It was insane. So I ended up with an auto-draft of someone who was out all year. Can't remember who it was. And anyway...
He was probably better than Brinson.
It probably was.
Out all year. At least he didn't hurt you.
Yeah, it could have been much worse. You could have been stuck with Lewis Brinson all year.
Whoa! There was some stolen bases there. I'm sure of that. But yeah, it's a tricky situation that's going to be made harder this year in towards the middle of the draft. But for me, it's just letting the guys know, right? We're all in different time zones. It's just making everyone aware of where it's at and not being on people's backs, I guess. But looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. And Tom Pringle's in this league as well. So we've got 2 Brits in one league.
Yeah, well, didn't you? Someone called him out, right? That's why
he called me out. He wanted me.
Okay, so you get the added benefit of being against Tom Pringle in your league. So I mean, obviously, it's now a 14-person league because Tom is in. So I mean,
it's the long con. I said this yesterday on Twitter. Pringle has been playing the long con, and he's got me suckered in and some money on it. And I've been, of course. But he's hustled me. I already know it. He's hustled me, and he's going to smash up TGFBI.
Him and I have put money on our finish in the overall every year he's been in. And every year he has paid money to the charity of my choosing. It has not even been close.
That must be why he's doing it this year, so he can use Peter's money to pay for your charity this year.
Yeah, I'm guessing. So he hasn't actually reached out to me this year, so maybe he's realized it's probably not worth it.
He's recouping his losses.
We'll remind him.
Yeah, please do. But for those of you who are in TGFBI and are going to be complaining about, this draft is so slow, just remember, there are people. We've got people in England playing. We've got people in Australia playing. We have people, I believe, in Argentina, or I know at least in South America. So this is not just an American contest. This has become a global contest. Over 400 people in it this year, 435 total people, and some of them are spread out across the globe. I know there's someone in China playing this year. It's a fantastic contest that can bring the industry together no matter where you're located. So, but just remember, some people work overnight, some people, are up overnight because that's what their time zone is. Let's talk a little bit about how you guys watch baseball in England, because, I know where I've traveled around the US to and watched baseball, and sometimes games are blacked out. Sometimes games start at different times than I'm used to. It's got to be really frustrating for you guys sometimes to not be able to watch your favorite team. So, Peter, talk to me about what it's like for you watching baseball in England as opposed to having all the access in America.
Well, and as a Marlins fan, right? So let's kind of add that to the mix.
Exactly.
So in 2020, I adopted a completely new strategy because the Marlins were in it, right? We were fully in it in the playoff hunt. And so that kind of changed the dynamic for me. And what that meant was I was sometimes staying up to watch some of the late games, starting at midnight, 1 a.m. kind of time. And I'd stay up and watch most of it. When I couldn't, or I had work on, I'd go total media, social media blackout effectively. So I turned my phone off fully until I watched the game in full the next day without any spoilers. So listen, baseball from the UK with that time zone difference, it's tough and it's a commitment. But I absolutely loved it last year. In the playoff hunt, it was it was awesome. So wouldn't change it. But could I do it over 162? I'm not convinced. I was absolutely knackered after 60. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe the other guys have had more experience of playoff hunts than me.
Well, Darius has had some experience in playoff hunts, being a Giants fan, getting to go through those World Series. But the Giants are located on the West Coast. So we're like, you and I are podcast partners at times at Friends of Fantasy Benefits. And it can be difficult to match up our schedules because when I want to record at noon, that means you have to be ready at 8 p.m. So how do you watch Giants games?
Often I don't, to be honest. Certainly not live. I'm a pretty early riser, so occasionally I will watch the last inning or two of a Giants game when I wake up because they're still playing. So yeah, people complain about the game being too long these days, but sometimes the 4-hour game is great for you because I get to watch the late innings. But I'm pretty flexible in who I watch, to be honest. I will watch the teams that are on during the friendlier UK hours. One good thing about being here is that we don't get blackouts. And we also get like the whole postseason as part of our package. So we can watch all 30 teams. We can watch anything we want, whenever we want. So that makes our lives a little bit easier. So yeah, watch a lot of games on Sundays when there's a lot of day games. We see a lot of Cubs games, to be honest, because they have a lot of day games. So those are good factors. But yeah, I picked poorly. Unlike Pete, at least he picked an East Coast team. But yeah, usually the Giants are starting at midnight, if not later. Sometimes as late as 3 a.m. And yeah, I'm a morning person, so I'm not staying up for those games.
I used to work overnights before this year, or before 2020, and there were times where I would have to go to sleep when the Giants were on, and I always loved the extra innings games because I'd be driving to work and the game would still be on, and so I could watch like the tail end of the extra innings, because I was up in the middle of the night, pretty much in lockstep with you guys in terms of your hours. So I totally empathize with that and how difficult it can be, especially if the majority of the games of your favorite team are at night, which for you guys is in the middle of the night. Jamie, what about you? Like, what Darius said is really cool. I didn't realize that you guys don't have the same blackout restrictions as us. Cause like, I know when I went to Hawaii a few years ago, like I was there and all my family were taking a nap and I was like, oh, I'm going to turn on a baseball game. And every single West Coast team was blacked out from the MLB app in Hawaii, which meant like I could not watch a game even though I wanted to, and there were games on. So Jamie, what's it like for you being a baseball fan and having different access to baseball?
Well, yeah, it's one of the things I've always found quite staggering that, I can live in the UK and watch any game with the pass. It's what, $150 it works out for the whole season and postseason, and there's zero restrictions. And yet you could live next door to a stadium in the US and you couldn't watch a game on the telly or any other access. It is a strange way, I suppose, to try and grow the game in the US, but it does give a freedom. Like I said, if you're sitting down the afternoon, not much on, just watch an afternoon game, not much interest in it, maybe fancy interest in it, but if it's the Yankees aren't on, someone else will be. So it plays perfectly for that. There is some on the TV channels, the paid sports subscription channels we get in the UK. They do show 4 or 5 games a week, mainly the prime time Sunday night games, and a few others in the week. So there is some on the TV. So you can easily sit there, watch it, one on the laptop, one on the TV beyond it. So, I'll turn my own little split screen sort of action as it was. But it is so much more freedom, I think, in the UK than in the US, in the fact that we don't have any restrictions. We can watch all the games we want. All we've got to do is pay the one-off fee, and that's it. You're set for the whole season.
That sounds amazing. I mean, I'm glad you guys have that access. Ryan, are you waking up? You said you set alarms for yourself for the draft. Are you setting alarms yourselves for Phillies games?
No. Would you?
I mean, maybe not for the Phillies, but
Yeah.
I was so like craving baseball during like during the quarantine days and the early days of the pandemic when we were supposed to have season and didn't. I was setting alarms to watch KBO games. So I think
Nice.
I think the audience has a better idea this year than maybe last year when we had these kind of discussions in terms of like, hey, I just needed some baseball, so I woke up at 4:00 in the morning.
Yeah, it's when I was at uni and the Phillies were good. And it links into what Pete's saying about the Marlins, although we all know that the Marlins still aren't actually good. It was just a fluke.
Whoa.
In 2008, like 2009, that era, and because I was a student and basically my studies just involved, I'll get through this with a reasonable grade, but really I want to watch baseball and drink beer. So that's what I did. And it was great, like watching those Phillies playoff games against the Dodgers and watching Matt Stairs crush home runs at Dodger Stadium. And that was unbelievable. And that was probably like the height of my real baseball fandom and when I was really, really in love with watching the games. And I love watching baseball now, but it's more of because of the flexibility with the MLB TV package, it's more of a dipping in and out of games and tuning in when Nelson Cruz is at bat and tuning in when Jose Ramirez is at bat. And I do watch full games, but few and far between. And as Darius says, you end up watching a lot of the Cubs, which is fine. The Cubs are fine. It's a good attraction, but they're on, if they're on at 12 noon or 1 o'clock their time, that's a pretty nice tea time game for us to sit down and watch after work. So yeah, if the Phillies are on at 1 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock, I'll watch the Phillies. If they're on at midnight, it's a very easy pass.
Okay, so that kind of begs an interesting question because a lot of people who grew up in the 90s in the U.S. became Yankee fans or they became Braves fans because Braves were on TBS and everybody had access to them around the country, or they rooted for their hometown team. Well, you guys don't have hometown teams, right? You guys just have the team that you decided to root for. So, Ryan, how did you become? I mean, you talked about being an Eagles fan. So, is that just you're like, well, I'm already rooting for Philadelphia once. I don't care that that's the birthplace of the American Revolution. I'm going to root for the Phillies.
Well, I am a politics graduate, so I do care that it's the birthplace. As it happens, I watched the Eagles play the Patriots in that first Super Bowl when Donovan McNabb and Brian Westbrook played well but lost ultimately. And I was rooting for the underdog in that game. And I was learning the rules, and I became an Eagles fan. And as it happens, I wound up working on summer camps out in the US, and I was in northern Pennsylvania, fairly close to Philly, but closer to New York, really, in the northern part of Pennsylvania. But at that point, it was very easy for me to start traveling, watching the Phillies. I met a lot of people from Philly. I spent a lot of time there. And I just love the city. I do feel some sort of connection with it, whilst it was random that I ended up with Philadelphia. As a Leeds United supporter here in the UK, the aggression of the fan base is mirrored. It's fairly mirrored. Okay. Yeah, there's a little bit of a chip on that shoulder, and that's okay. I kind of like it. The passion's fantastic. So Phillies all the way for me, but I'm more of a fantasy baseball guy now these days. I just like a good power hitter.
There you go. Okay. That makes sense. Peter, a Marlins, I mean, typically when people pick teams, and either jump on a bandwagon or they're a kid, they're picking the teams that are good. The Marlins have not been so good. They were better last year, made the playoffs. I think they're doing good things with their rebuild. But how did you end up becoming a Marlins fan? Because that feels a little bit like torture.
In many ways, it has been since I decided to follow the Marlins full time, and I think this story will be true for quite a few UK or international fans. Where you go on holiday to the US, you go to a game that just happened to be Miami and Stanton hit a huge home run in that game, and I went, yeah, this team they look good. Jose Fernandez was pitching that day as well, actually. So I just really lucked out with, that's the only Marlins game I've seen live. And Jose was on the mound and Stanton hit a home run against the Diamondbacks. So that was it. Stanton hit that bomb. I went straight to the club store, bought a jersey there and then. I went, that's it. I'm in. So I reckon that is quite a familiar situation. My brother actually lives in St. Louis. He moved to St. Louis, 10 years ago. And through that, I started following the Rams that have obviously now relocated to LA. But I've been to see the Cardinals as well. And for some reason, just felt no connection to the Cardinals. Like, the stadium was awesome, but I don't know. There was nothing happened in the game. It was a bit of a nothing game. And I was like, nah, they haven't blown me away. So there you go. Big G, big bombs. He hooked me in. And as soon as I bought the shirt, effectively, they tore it all down. So, there you go.
I like that you went to St. Louis and felt nothing for them, because the Cardinals don't need any more fans. They've got plenty of them already. So I'm glad that you have your affinity and your love for your team, no matter which way you ended up with them. Darius and I share the love of the Giants. So Darius, tell people how you ended up becoming a Giants fan. So
I got into baseball through fantasy, and I actually had Tim Lincecum on my first fantasy team during one of his Cy Young years. So I was kind of, following along with the stats really, and I was like, this guy seems pretty good, and, started looking up clips of him on YouTube and stuff and getting into games. And so I just sort of became a Giants fan that way. Everybody sort of thinks that I'm a Giants fan because of all the World Series, but they actually sucked then. And I just lucked in at the right time. So yeah, just loved watching Tim Lincecum pitch, and it happened for me that way. Also didn't think about the time zone, which was stupid in hindsight, but here we are. I can't complain really.
And then Jamie, you ended up as a Yankee fan. I mean, that seems to be the most, the easiest fan base to jump on because the Yankees were so good. But I don't know, did you jump on during like their big years, or how did you become a Yankee fan?
Well, it's in part, yeah. There's a few sort of bits all come together at the same time. So I used to watch baseball sort of as a mid-teen, sort of late 90s, early turn of the century without getting really into it. And then 2002, as I show my age, when I was 18, I was working in a bar. Used to watch the games on Channel 5 in the UK when I finished work. 50% of the games used to be Yankees games. So I used to sort of get more into that. And also, I've always been drawn to like the history of sport and sort of the almost like it's cliche, like the romance of it and the history of the Yankees. I used to be a bit of a mark for New York, Friends and Seinfeld. I used to grow up watching, used to love them. So it sort of all come together as one glorious decision to be a Yankees fan. And then since then, we've won one World Series. So I'm not sure I'll be welcome in the Bronx anytime soon, as I seem to have brought some sort of new Bambino curse to her. But, it's one of those things. But yeah, I've been fortunate enough to go twice. So I was there at the old Yankee Stadium, and then the following year at the new Yankee Stadium. So I've been fortunate enough to see the before and the after. I was there during the All-Star game for the 2008 season, the last year at Yankee Stadium when it was held there, and the big parade and sort of even the pageantry about that. It was unreal just being there. And it just sort of just snowballed over time really into the point that, yeah, it is just Yankees 100% pretty much over any other sporting team are back now.
All right, so it begs the question. I think I know Darius's answer, so I'll let him go first. What would be more important to you this year, winning TGFBI, the overall, or the Giants winning a World Series?
Yeah, I feel like I'd be a bit greedy if I asked for another World Series. I think we'll be back there pretty soon. I trust what Farhan's doing, but yeah, I'll take the TGFBI.
Well, I'm glad that you trust what Farhan's doing, because I'm still a little bit concerned about the way things have been going. But we'll see. We'll give them time. We won some World Series. It's easier for us to sit back and just not have to worry about being good for a little while. Peter, Marlins, I mean, they're a team that they've won some World Series, but I don't know that you were fans of the team when they did. So would you rather win the TGFBI overall or the Marlins win a World Series?
Here's how I look at it. If the Marlins win a World Series, I will probably also win TGFBI because I will have drafted the guys that no one will. Brinson will lead me home in my charge. Brian Anderson will be at third base. Alfaro, the catcher. We'll have Trevor Rogers in the rotation. You know, I'll be riding the coattails. You know, so in reality, if the Marlins win it, so will I.
I'm starting to see why Tom challenged you instead of me this year. There seems to be some blind loyalty that may be an issue for you.
It could be.
Ryan, what about you? Phillies win the World Series or win the TGFBI overall?
Well, Darius has hedged his bets because what Darius has done is he's realized that the Giants are not going to the playoffs. And so he's gone with TGFBI. And really, the answer to what he's being asked is he would prefer the Giants to win the World Series. I know that to be true. So it's funny. I love fantasy baseball. I told you, I prefer it really now. It's the reason I'm so hooked on the sport in many ways. But I would prefer the Phillies to win the World Series. Like, if the Phillies won the World Series this season, not only would I be in Bob Bamber, who runs the Atlanta Braves Twitter account, not only would I be in his ear and in his head for quite a long period of time, but I would really be enjoying myself and celebrating that. Yeah, there's something about when your team goes on a run like that you can't help but love it. And I'll take second in TGFBI.
All right, that sounds fair. Jamie, what about you? Yankees win the World Series or first overall in TGFBI? You're probably the most likely of people to have their favorite team win a World Series on this panel.
Yeah, Yankees. It's it's as much as I love fantasy baseball, I love the TGFBI, what you put together, and it's an honor to be in it. I got into fantasy baseball through being in baseball, through being a Yankees fan. And if someone said to me, you've got a choice of giving up fantasy baseball for the rest of your life or giving up being a Yankees fan and supporting anyone, I'd sack off fantasy baseball as much as I love it. And it'll be like losing a kidney and a lung and half my heart and a liver. But, you know,
Jamie.
Yeah. No, but it would be Yankees, I think. It's the other thing. I'm not much of a personal glory person. If I have personal success, it's like, yeah, whatever, I've done something. But as I'm an Arsenal fan, a New York Giants fan. I've seen both of them win Super Bowls, win Premier League, FA Cup titles. I've only seen the Yankees as a full-on supporter win World Series once, and that was 12 years ago now. So it's a bit overdue as well, I think.
Overdue. No one feels sorry for the Yankees. Can we just make sure that no matter what you say, we don't feel sorry for you?
I wasn't going to bring up 2009 either, Ryan, but you poked me there. So,
there we go. He wasn't a personal glory guy a minute ago, but now he's bringing up the Phillies losing.
I didn't win the World Series. I just watched the team that beat you to do it. So, you know.
He's a personal glory guy, even though he said he wasn't.
Well, gentlemen, what we're doing here today is we're raising money for Mental Health America. Every dollar that's donated is being donated to Mental Health America. And if you donate either via PayPal, justinmasonfantasy@gmail.com, or via Venmo @Justin Salinger, every dollar you donate gets you a raffle ticket for some amazing raffle prizes. We have some of those raffle prizes right now. Jamie's going to give away a Fangraphs membership, and I'm going to do the randomizer right now. And Steve Cozzolino, you've won a Fangraphs membership. I will contact you and put you in touch with Jamie to get that all worked out. And then we have an Oppo with the Boppo t-shirt from Peter. Look at that. It is fantastic.
Is he going to wash that first or what?
No, that's what gives it its value. It's
Game warm.
Yeah,
Game warm, baby.
So, and the winner of that is Alex Fast. Alex Fast, a pitcher has donated.
Absolutely delighted.
There you go.
Beautiful.
So I will get Alex's contact information to you, Peter, and I will get Steve's contact information to Jamie. And we're going to be giving away prizes all day long today, all day long tomorrow. Donate. You can see the little ticker at the bottom if you forgot where you can donate. And it's hopefully last year we raised just over $6,000 for this. We're currently at $1,800, over $1,800 so far raised for this event. I really appreciate everybody who's been donating. If you'd like to see kind of a whole list of the schedule for the next 2 days, for the prizes, for the amount of money raised, if you go over to my Twitter at Justin Mason FWFB, I believe pinned to the top is a link to a Google Doc that I'm updating live. If that's why you see me turn away, it's because I'm updating new donations and things like that. So definitely go check, excuse me, go check that out. We got a few minutes. I want you guys to plug your work and where people can reach you at. So Darius, remind people where you can be reached at, and then what you and some work you want to plug.
Yep, so you can find me on Twitter at DariusA64. Check out all my writing at Baseball Prospectus. Buy the Baseball Prospectus Annual. A lot of great content in there. The comments for Cleveland and the Astros this year, which is a lot of fun. So do check that out. And then, find us at Batflips and Nerds. That's Batflips_nerds on Twitter. Find us on any podcast app. And I'll give a little Roto Brits program for one's coming up. They had Rudy Gamble on this week. Really excellent stuff. They're a lot of fun. So do listen to them as well.
All right, Jamie, remind people where you can be reached and what some work you want to plug.
Yeah, my Twitter is at Baseball Jimbo, Baseball_Jimbo, and I'm over at rotoballer.com. I cover all a lot of the baseball, different articles going up weekly, monthly, all sorts. There's a great team over there at the moment, and really good guys, really welcoming for me personally. So it's fantastic for me. That's where you can get my articles. Also, just want to plug out the Essex Arrows baseball team. You can reach them on Twitter, at Essex Arrows. There's the subgroups for the different teams over on there. So if you want to follow a bit of British baseball, then hit them up. And we've got different links for all the different access you need for British baseball over in this country.
Is there British baseball DFS?
Not DFS that I'm aware of. I know Peter set up a ESPN British Baseball Fantasy League last year. There's I think about 4 or 5. It really took off, really popular. But I don't believe there's any DFS leagues, and I certainly know that there's not going to be any fantasy related to the clubs over here because no one knows who's going to turn up any given Sunday a lot of the time. But yeah, there's maybe in the future there's a market for it.
All right. I mean, I'm all for gambling. So, Peter, remind everybody where you can be reached and plug your work.
Yeah, so Twitter, it's at Miami Marlins _UK. In terms of podcast, that's my main outlet. If you're a fantasy guy, which, well, if you're watching this, you will be. The podcast is, as we mentioned, Roto Brits, weekly on a Thursday, co-hosted with Ryan. We're also getting some awesome guests on, as Darius mentioned. Rudy was on this week. Matt Williams was on the week before. Mike Govier, I think, is on next week. So, we're getting some fantasy studs in there. Justin, there's a spot for you as well in the future too, so that should be fun.
Anytime.
If you like your Marlins, then the other podcast, Fish Across the Pond, we do weekly Marlins UK vibes. That's every Tuesday, but don't all hit me up at once for that one.
Less keen to commit to that one, you'll know it. He's just staying quiet.
Yeah. Ryan, remind everybody where you can be reached on Twitter and then plug your work.
Oh yeah, if you want to be annoyed by me, like my energy is a little ridiculous, and I enjoy baseball and fantasy baseball, and I'm not afraid to sort of tell you my opinions. So you can get me at RotoTricks. And as Pete says, most of the work now is coming through the Roto Brits podcast and at Roto Brits on Twitter. There's a bit of a rumor that Darius is also lined up to make an appearance on the podcast. So he's coming over from the wonderful Batflips and Nerds to make an appearance in the coming weeks. And there's also maybe some emailing now going on between myself and Gray Albright of Rasball. And that feels like it would be like alongside you, Justin, we're getting into sort of like silly realms now of guest level. So, and
Gray is definitely silly.
Yeah, I don't know whether I can keep up with Gray's energy, but I'll try. I should also say that if you're a Phillies fan in the UK, then the UK Phillies outfit on Twitter and the podcast that they do with Dave Shaw, and I appear on as well at times, is also really, really worth listening to, because Dave does great work with Phillies fans based in the UK and all over the world.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining us and supporting Mental Health America and Podapolooza this year. I'm going to start removing you guys from the stream and bringing in our next crew. We have Chris Olson. Chris, tell everybody where you can reach on social media and kind of talk about what you do in the industry.
Oh, sure. So I'm KO_reporter on Twitter. And I'm a disciple of Ron Chandler. So I'm a Baseball HQ columnist. I do the American League East playing time tomorrow. I do playing time today for the Red Sox, Rays, and Yankees. And I've written player commentaries for the Baseball Forecaster for several years as well.
Awesome. Also joining us is Nate Grimm. Nate, welcome to the show.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Remind everybody where you can reach on social media and then talk about what you do in the industry.
Yeah, so social media is just Nate_Grimm. And I'm sort of making a transition right now. Actually, I was with Roto World, which has now recently become NBC Sports Edge. And I was with them for the past 8 years, but then switched over to Baseball Prospectus. So I'm writing for them now. So doing, right now, obviously it's just draft prep season. So writing previews for each of the positions and I'm doing a lot of mono league stuff. So really digging deep into the player pool. So that's what I'm up to.
Awesome. Also joining us is Matt Williams. Matt, thank you for joining us. You're on mute.
Hey, can everyone hear me now?
Yeah, there you go. A
little bit better.
professional mutes his microphone to make sure no ambient noise is caught, right? So I appreciate that.
Good morning, everybody. What's up?
Let everybody know where you can reach on social media and then talk about what you do in the industry.
Social media, you can find me right here, MATTWI77IMS on Twitter. Most people know me from my 2021 player breakdowns. I do them every year, just player threads that are like the maximum that Twitter allows. I'm the host of the Turn 2 podcast. I'm over at NBC Sports Edge. They hired me, so Nate quit.
Yeah, that was exactly it. They said, "Hey, we got some exciting guys coming on," and I said, "Who?" They said, "Matt Williams," and I said, "Listen, I gotta go."
That makes a lot of sense. Matt's a great analyst, but it's hard to be in a room with him for too long, right? So I don't know how all the guys at the Turn 2 podcast put up with you. I'm just kidding. I love Matt. Matt's one of my favorite people in the industry, and really, you've got to go watch the breakdowns Matt does on Twitter. It's absolutely amazing. If you're not following Matt on Twitter, you're missing out on really, really good content. Speaking of really, really good content, we have Michael Simeone, SP Streamer Draft Guide. Michael, welcome to the show.
What's going on, Justin? Thanks for doing this, and thanks for having me on.
Of course. Remind everybody where you can reach on social media and then plug everything you do.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at SPStreamer. We also have a website, spstreamer.com, podcast SPStreamer, and I do also write for Rotographs with you, Justin.
Yes, you do. Joining us as well is Ray Murphy from Baseball HQ, Baseball HQ Forecaster, one of the best draft guides in the entire industry. Ray, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here, Justin. Like Matt, I put my Twitter handle right. I gotta get my hand moving the right way. That darn reverse camera always gets me. Also, Baseball Forecaster's out now. We're also, deep into draft prep season at Baseball HQ, and we're hosting our online first pitch event next weekend, which is taking up almost all of my time this weekend. So life is good. It's Mark.
Well, I appreciate you being able to break away for a little bit, because I know that's going to be a huge event. Paul and I are going to be adding to it a little bit, and I'll definitely be watching along all weekend next weekend. It feels like we've got so many events, one after another, leading up to the season. But I think that's great. I think it's awesome to have something to do every weekend before the start of the year.
I think we're like 1 year away from having to have a draft of February and March weekends to see what organization gets to do what.
Yeah, well, this is why, like, I was like, oh, I gotta get rolling. I started hearing like, oh, we got First Pitch Florida, we have PitchCon. I was like, oh my god, I got to put this thing together. Next year, Podapolooza is going to be All-Star break. I'm saying it right now. I'm just,
nice.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna let you guys fight it out together amongst yourselves for the early season content, and I'm gonna take off the week that everybody pretends to like the All-Star break and really doesn't. So, Ray, just in case people are listening later on via the podcast, do tell people where you can reach on social media.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, I pointed, but I didn't say it. Right.
Yeah.
Ray, I am at Ray HQ. I didn't actually type it correctly now that I look at it. So yeah.
See, there we go. Now we're clarifying. And if you are watching right now, or you're watching later, and you're like, oh, I don't have time to sit in front of the TV or the computer all weekend long watching these, but I want to hear them. They will be available later on YouTube, or they're currently available on YouTube, and they'll still be available later. You'll also be able to hear them on the TGFBI podcast feed. I'll break them down into the 45-minute segments and release them all throughout the week next week. So if you're not able to, be here because you got family commitments, you've got your own drafts or something like that, don't worry, you can still catch it later. But please donate. We're raising money for Mental Health America. We've already given away 2 prizes. We're going to give more prizes away at the end of this segment. The ticker below tells you where you can donate. That's via PayPal, justinmasonfantasy@gmail.com, or via Venmo at Justin Salinger. Every dollar raised goes to Mental Health America, which I think is a fantastic organization doing really, really great work in this country. And we're living in a time where maybe people don't have the ability to focus on their mental health because of COVID, because of quarantining, and this organization does a lot to help people. So really appreciate everybody that's already donated. We've already raised $1,856.97. So, and for every $1,000 raised, I'm going to give away a TGFBI spot for next year's TGFBI. We raised over $6,000 last year. 6 people got into TGFBI from this event. So hopefully we can beat that. And actually, I want to beat Pitcherless. Pitcherless raised $10,000 last weekend through PitchCon. We're in direct competition. Love Nick, love all the guys at Pitcherless, but we got to beat them over this weekend. So keep those donations rolling in. Let's talk some fantasy baseball, because you guys are great fantasy baseball minds in this industry. And our topic for this segment is going to start with pitching and what people are going to do with kind of the 2020 ramp up from a shortened 2020 season. So let's start with 6-man rotations. We know there are some teams that are planning on doing 6 rotations. We're sure there are probably other teams that aren't saying that they are, that will. So, Ray, how do you evaluate for like your drafts where to raise guys up or lower guys because of a 6-man rotation?
Yeah, it's interesting. The one thing I'm looking at a lot I actually wanted to throw this out to the group as a check on my process, is I'm keeping an eye on what we're projecting for total innings pitched at the top end of the pitcher pool. I did a little math this morning before we came on, and this time last year, we were projecting a handful of guys in the 190 plus range, anything from 190 up to the low 200s, and a total of 35 pitchers above 180 innings, just as a baseline for what we might project in a normal season. I'm at like half that right now. I have nobody over 190, and I have 20 guys higher than 175, which is a big difference. But I'm not sure that's actually, in my head, I actually think like we could be more severe with that. I'm not sure, even a 10 guys throwing 189 innings is realistic this year. What do the rest of you guys think? Am I too conservative or too aggressive here?
You Michael, said 30 only. You said 35 only went over 180. Only 17 went over 70 last year.
Yeah. All right, so, Michael, what do you think? Do you think that's too conservative, too aggressive? Where are you at on pitchers?
I mean, I feel like that's about right. I feel like I could only really think. I think maybe we see one reach 190 to 200, and in my mind, that might be Bauer, just because he's basically built for this kind of stuff. But yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of guys, 180, 170 for the most part, like those older guys, whereas the younger guys who have been limited in the past, I feel like we're going to see more so 130 to 150 maybe. It's kind of tough. I mean, I know, the Brewers have come out saying they're just going to tack on 100 innings basically. I don't know how much they're going to abide by that. But I could see a lot of teams kind of doing the same thing, which leaves a lot of pitchers around like the 160-ish range probably, maybe, and then a lot less too. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be a mess, and we've never encountered this before, so we have literally no idea what's actually going to happen. We're all just guessing at this point. But I mean, I think that's probably like the best educated guess that we could do.
Nate, what are your thoughts on this? Is this something that you're really thinking about when you take maybe an early pitcher?
I'd love to tell you that it's a huge part of my reasoning, but really, as Mike was saying, more than ever, I mean, projections are, especially things like innings projections, are traditionally kind of guesses in a way. You're looking at what a guy's done and what you think he can do, but there's so many variables that just go into a regular year what a guy does. And so in this year, it's like a decision point at the margins. If I've got two guys who I think are really close in skills, maybe which one I think is going to go more. But really, I'm not finding many of those where I have a lot of guys who I just view very similarly, and so generally, it's not really weighing much into my decision making to this point, at least.
What about you, Matt? Is this weighing in your decision making at all, or is this kind of a thing where you're like, oh, I value this guy and this guy pretty much the same, but I feel like this one might be in a 6-man rotation, so I'm going to take the other guy.
Exactly. If they're in a 6-man rotation, I am dinging them. If at least like Seattle, the paces that are going to do it, because it's going to knock down your innings max by 30-ish around there. As far as the way teams go, I think there'll be a lot of hybrid 6-man rotations, which people aren't really talking about, like the Cardinals. They might let like Wainwright and Flaherty go on normal rest always, but then maybe they have a hybrid 6-man where everyone else is skipping more days. So there'll be some pitchers that are in a 6-man rotation that are still going on normal rest. There'll be things like that. So yeah, I think it really depends on each person, but overall, like, it's good for guys like James Paxton. He's in a 6-man rotation, but he could probably use the extra rest. So, I mean, literally, it's nuanced, ridiculously nuanced.
I think we can't put that much into 6-man rotations either, just because how many injuries are we going to see? They're going to have 6 pitchers, but they're likely going to go down to 5 for a good chunk of the season. Yeah. So it's something to consider, but in my mind, not too much.
Chris, how much are you considering it?
I think and maybe this is just to slack off on my preparation, but I think I've decided that not to get hung up at all on who is actually committed to a 6-man versus who hasn't. I mean, I think unless your team is dumb, workload management is going to be a huge part of how you go about getting through the year. And just because one team might be a 6-man, but another team, I mean, for example, Tampa Bay, I mean, when we look up at the end of the year in October, you're going to probably have 9 guys that threw 70 innings plus or whatever. So even though that's quote unquote a 5-man rotation, perhaps at the moment, there's no reason to treat it that way. You can't spell Rich Hill without IL. These guys are going to miss some time. That's sort of it's a feature, not a bug, of signing some of these guys. 6-man, 5-man, there's going to be a lot of churn in all the different rotations. So I'm sort of not getting hung up on, whether it's a 6-man or a 5-man right now.
Well, I think it could hurt certain guys. Like Marco Gonzalez is a good example. He's in a 6-man with Paxton, except Marco with no strikeouts. I mean, he went 6.29 innings per start, and he threw like 96 pitches per game, which is decent. But he's not striking people out, so you kind of want volume from him. And he's going pretty early for the kind of pitcher he is because he had such a good year last year. 6-man rotation, if it's consistent, would really hurt him where it may not hurt someone else. So I do think it's not a large group I'm dinging, but he's one of the pitchers, for example, that I would be concerned with it.
But counterpoint to that, they were in a 6-man rotation last year. It didn't ding him that much then anyways. So
because of the rest, he's going deeper into games though. So that's why.
Yeah, but I mean, he's still giving, like you said, it's nuanced differently. I would ding him a little just because, I mean, there's other guys that are kind of like, they can give you more. You want to get as many innings this year probably as you can safely. So I think his value, at least where he's going, because he's going quite early, I think, he was already going too early. But I just think it's one of those guys where I think what you're expecting out of him, where everyone's innings coming down, he may be someone that I coin flip out of drafting, for example, but it's minute. But in this season, you're looking to, that's what rankings are anyway. There's this large group that there's no daylight between. And for me, that kind of hurts him in my mind.
I think the Mariners are an interesting example because they're a team that could stick with it all year long, even if they do have injuries, because they're not playing for a playoff spot, right? I question teams like the Milwaukee Brewers limiting guys. They're still kind of competing. Some of the the Padres, maybe they start in a 6-man rotation, but Dinelson Lamet's arm's going to fall off at some point anyways, and they want to win a World Series. So do you think team context changes that for you, Chris?
It's funny. The team that was running through my mind is Ray and I's beloved Red Sox, and in my there was a famous question that sports writer Bob Ryan once asked of Theo of what's the fascination with JD Drew, and I always want to sort of paraphrase it and say what's the fascination with Martin Perez. I think certain teams are gonna have the best intentions of starting out with spreading the workload, and then they're going to get really sick and tired of seeing some of these guys come through the rotation and maybe shorten it up, especially, with Boston. I think there's at least some pressure. I know they're not all in, quote unquote, for 2021, but I think that they desperately need to show some competitiveness to kind of get the fan base back a little bit. And I think there's going to be some, and the Seattle example that just came up is a good one. I do. Maybe it's a little too early. Maybe I need to, circle back and take a little closer look at some of these other situations and see what I really think about the back ends of those rotations.
Yeah, Justin, let me piggyback on that for a second. There's another aspect to this that I think is going to be maddening all season long. We sort of ran into it last year, but I think the Red Sox are a good example of it. Like, as Michael said earlier, there are plenty of teams that aren't going to have 6 starters, right? So I think what you're going to see is 6 starter, quote unquote, is really going to be bullpen day. And, they're going to make, I can totally see the Red Sox, for instance, just calling a bullpen day, like out of the blue, based on anything like, hey, look, Martin Perez actually gave us 7 innings today. The bullpen's fairly fresh. Bang, bullpen day tomorrow. Let's just slip one in here. So point being, like, for people who have to set their lineups weekly, even trying to figure out, like, the following Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, when your pitcher is pitching and who he's facing, good luck.
So, Michael, how are you going to deal with that madness? Because I also think you could run into situations, especially halfway through the season, where teams like the Dodgers or teams like the Padres, they know they're going to make the postseason, and they don't necessarily want to skip starts, but maybe they start saying, I'm going to pull you out in the 5th, or I'm going to pull you out in the 4th instead, so we can limit the total inning workload. So, like, how do fantasy managers deal with this?
You don't. It's going to be a nightmare. I mean, I feel like it's something that we're just going to have to wait and see, and then we'll kind of get a feel for what these teams are doing. And I think that just kind of is, it kind of brings up the reasoning why SPs are being pushed up right now so much in drafts, because you want these guys that you don't have to worry about that with. You don't think there's going to be any limiting concerns with them. Guys like Lance Lynn or whatever, they're just going to push them out there, say, go, we don't care. But I mean, in season, it's going to be rough, and it's going to be madness. And I think it's just a matter of us figuring it out as the year goes on.
Matt, how are you dealing with this? You're a really smart guy. I like the team you built against me in the battle of the podcast draft, and then again, we faced off in the tag team draft. So, like, are you moving the upper tier of pitchers up to deal with this, or are you gonna try to play it as it goes in season?
There's like a couple of things. I'm not really moving the upper tier up. I'm moving that tier like the Luzardo, the Urias, the guys that you're not. Well, we talked about the Dodgers, but I think the lower end pitchers, like as far as innings, are moved up because I think the top is down, therefore the bottom, moves a little closer, so the gap is smaller. I'm actually targeting guys like Freddie Peralta. If Seth Lugo was healthy, I'd be targeting him too because, like Ray was saying, if you're not really sure with like 2-star pitchers and bullpen days and what's happening, at the back end of drafts, instead of like maybe reaching for those middling pitchers, you can always go for like, if a Lugo Peralta, when Lugo's healthy, like they go like 2-3 outings in a week, you get like 6-7 innings, maybe you get like, 6 to 8 strikeouts, maybe you get a win, maybe you get a save. There's some value there. As far as pitching, I'm more looking for, what's the word would be like, not consistency, like I'm trying to think of the word here, like efficiency, because if you look at the guys that usually pitch the most innings, you're like, Trevor Bauer and Lance Lynn are at the top. They averaged, I got it right here, Bauer 6.64 innings per start, Lynn 6.46, and no one's worried about their innings, but they average like 108 and 105 pitches per start, so you're not worried about them anyway, but they're at the top. But there's other pitchers at the top like Kyle Hendricks and Zach Wheeler. Hendricks 6.76 innings per start, but he's doing it only 97 pitches. So look for the guys that consistently can get deeper into games. So even if they're on a team that is competing, maybe they'll let them go deeper into the games just because they're throwing less pitches per game. So it's not necessarily innings per game, but actually pitches. So if looking for examples later in the draft, like Zach Davies, everyone's kind of like interested in him going to Chicago. He only he averaged 5.76 innings per game, and he only did it on 84 pitches. So if you're looking for him to take another like step, there's stuff like that. So, and another one's like Adam Wainwright. He's a really sneaky guy, very, very efficient, throws a lot of innings. So it's not necessarily I'm looking for innings. I'm looking for people that are really efficient, so that even in a short season, they'll probably be at the top of the pack in a safer fashion.
What about you, Nate? How are you approaching this kind of just cluster of a season? Like Michael mentioned earlier on in this segment, like we've never dealt with any of this before. So are you moving your starting pitchers up in draft, or are you going to try to account for this in season more?
Yeah, I think, one thing that may be more paramount than ever before, and it's become kind of, I'm going to take the bit of the SP streamer here, but streaming is maybe going to be more paramount than ever this year in terms of keeping those last few spots on your roster very fluid, very open for guys who you think are going to have matchups and have good matchups, and being able to pick those guys up and get them in your lineup instead of like Matt was saying, throwing some darts at some middling starters who you might be inclined to hold on to the whole year in hopes that, they give you volume. Maybe instead you're trying to stream, and pick up and kind of hit on a guy who has a good matchup, who is definitely going to start that week and who, then you can just shed the next week. So I think that there's the striking the balance of that would be, yes, like, making sure that you get in those first probably 2 rounds, that you get a starter and one of those guys who is going to be immune from all of those things, from the innings caps and from the 6-man rotation. That's another thing with the 6-man rotation. A lot of the guys who are worth caring about in those early rounds, regardless of whether or not they're on a team that's doing that, are probably still going to go pretty regularly. So, I think that getting 1 or 2 of those guys in the first, 5 rounds really does then set you up to be able to turn some of the back into your roster with a little more freedom.
All right. We have officially gone over the $2,000 mark. I really appreciate everybody donating for Mental Health America. That is another TGFBI entry I will be giving away at the end of the weekend. So we're up to 2. I'll give away as many as, we donate or people donate for. So for $1,000 raised, I'm going to give away a TGFBI entry, give away 6 last year. Going to continue giving those away, as things grow. We also have some really great raffle items I'm going to raffle one off right now. And the one we're going to raffle off is the SP Streamer Draft Kit from Michael Simeon. Really appreciate Michael donating that. I have purchased it myself and gave away some copies. So I purchased some extra ones out there. Michael, talk a little bit about like what's in that draft guide that you're giving away.
Yeah, so I mean, we break down over 500 players. We give like a deep analysis on each one, and then we have like a 50-page strategy section from Dave McDonald. We have, obviously a streaming section. Plus we have like basically like a sleeper section is in there, and then we have like a little glossary too with like all different kinds of underlying metrics and their averages. So we have a lot of little different things in there, and it's great. It's I think it's like a total of 130 pages, I think. So it's a lot of stuff in there.
And then we'll also be giving away a Baseball HQ forecaster a little bit later on today. So Ray, talk a little bit about what's in the forecaster and why people should go out and get it.
It was months ago we wrote it now. We spend the fall, Chris and I, among others, grinding out the baseball forecaster. We've got 900 plus player profiles. Chris usually writes some of the funniest ones, but a whole bunch of new metrics in there this year. Mixing in some StatCast with our usual metrics, and then we've got a 40 or so page encyclopedia of analytics that is sort of our entire collected history of knowledge and analysis, and sort of the toolkit to what we do in the rest of the book. Ron, I should also plug Ron Chandler's introduction this year about the what we can take and leave from the 2020 season, which I thought was perhaps his best effort ever. So really in our mind, a framing document for the season we're in now with draft prep and everything.
All right, and the winner is Peter Pratt. He was just on the last segment, so if you missed it, you can go back and listen to Peter. He's already thrown a fire symbol into the chat. You can comment on all these, and if we have time in certain segments, we'll answer questions from the comment section. If you're listening to this later, then you can't have your questions answered. So, but that is what it is. We've had such a great discussion. I don't think we're going to get to all of our topics, so I'm going to kind of skip ahead and let's talk about the deadened ball, because the deadened ball is, I think, another wrinkle in the 2021 season. Like, we didn't have enough already. So, Ray, how are you incorporating a potentially deadened ball into your projections or into your drafts this year?
It's so frustrating because it's one of those places where MLB just drives you crazy. Let's keep in mind that the only reason we know about the deadened ball is basically because it got leaked, right? So we'll start from there. They don't want us to know anything about this. But then they finally showed their work, so to speak. And really, if you go through it, if they're capable of doing what they say they're trying to do with the precision they're trying to do it, it all seems fine and reasonable. But given the history of the last 4 or 5 years of quality of the ball jumping all over the place, I'm worried about the effects that they didn't anticipate or we can't see. So how do you account for it? I mean, I can sit here and make the 2% reduction in power output and sit here and go through using exit velocity and launch angle and even figure out which batters are most likely to be affected by it. But I think the error bars on MLB doing this right are so wide that I'm not even sure it's worth the effort.
Is it worth the effort for you, Michael?
Nah, I'm with Ray on this. Yeah, we don't really know. I mean, they're saying it's going to cut home run count by 5%, I think. But yeah, we don't really know. It's horrible that we won't get to see it in spring training either. So we have no way to prepare for it. I mean, could it help, pitchers who are home run prone like Matt Boyd? Potentially. But I think, again, this is just something we're going to have to wait and see. And something kind of like what Ray said, I'm just not going to put too much into.
Wait a minute. Right. Are they not using these balls in spring training? Is that what you said?
They're not.
No, they're not. It's even. We'll know early April what's going on.
No, nobody would want to get used to these balls. The pitchers don't want to.
I guess they have too many leftover balls from the previous one, so they got to use those.
Never change, MLB.
Baseball's cheap, you know. I mean, MLB, they don't make enough money, so.
Yeah, no, they couldn't waste you know, a bucket of balls. They got to make sure it gets used in spring training. Nate, what are you doing? Are you taking this into account with your drafts?
Not really, no. I do want to make note that in my notes I wrote "Return of the Boyd Boys?" ? So yeah. So you know, guys like that maybe, but again, I think it's more interesting, honestly, to look at the hitters, and you know, there's been some good work done on you know, who maybe has the shortest home run fly ball distances, and maybe some of those guys get dinged in my mind. But pitchers, you know, if it's going to be an across the board thing, it's really tough to say who's going to be affected positively by that change. So it's not really something I'm worried about.
I don't know. Look. Here's Rick Porcello, Cy Young award-winning bobblehead, and he's still out there. Amazingly, he is still out there. Someone sign him to a contract. This ball is going to bring back the Cy Young caliber results.
Potentially.
Matt, you've done some work on this, so talk to us. Like, are there hitters that you're going to fade now because maybe they're fence scrapers and that 5% could hurt them more than others?
It's a tricky thing to do because, I mean, you can look at average home run distance, which DJ LeMahieu will pop up, but he's at Yankee Stadium, so it doesn't matter. That's more like of a fact of a lot of them are going out because the kind of stadium he's in. But you can look at Connor Kirkon did a really good study on the dragless ball, which was going 2019 to 2020. It didn't end up being, you know, being a big factor in 2020, but maybe go back and look at the article if everyone wants to look it up. Like, it was on Prospects 365. Connor Kirkon was on there. And it talks about hitters that have a certain exit velocity and launch angle. Kevin Biggio, he hit some wall scrapers, but he, you know, Dundon or whatever the heck they're playing down in Florida. He maybe can benefit from the right field there, but overall, I maybe ding him. Guys like Mike Yastrzemski, Eduardo Escobar, if you were still in on him for some reason. Guys like that can get dinged. I'm not necessarily fading them. I mean, I was fading Biggio anyway, but for totally separate reasons. But maybe I don't fade drafting him, but I think you have to like work that into your team build or your team construction. Maybe you want to compensate a little more, you know, maybe grab people with a little more no doubt power. But, you know, if there's some people that like Ketel Marte, Michael Conforto, they have lower exit velocities, but they hit a lot of line drives and it's not going to affect them. Again, it's like a lot to get into. But overall, yeah, I'm not dinging too many people. I think you just have to maybe think about power, because usually you can find power late, and you still can, like Kyle Schwarber if Jock Peterson plays every day. But if you don't attack power in a smart way, you'll get a really low batting average. But if you try to attack power like I do, kind of like the death by 1,000 paper cuts thing, where everyone has power and speed, you might find yourself a little weak. So you might want to like maybe put a little more effort into making sure you are good in home runs. Otherwise, you'll fall back in the pack if you're just trying to get these guys that are like 15 to 20 home runs. You may want to throw in a couple of the big hitters.
So you're saying we should move Joey Gallo and Miguel Sano up 4 or 5 rounds?
Oh, is that you don't want the 200 batting average, guys? But yeah, I mean, I would consider maybe I would consider maybe like if you take Whit Merrifield and you're hoping for 20 home runs, maybe expect less. Maybe expect 15 home runs and try to pad, if you're doing projections as you draft, try to make up the difference somewhere else is kind of what I'm saying.
All right. We only have a little bit of time left. I want to make sure you guys get a chance to plug all your work and remind people where you can reach on social media. So if we have a little bit of time, maybe we could talk about the last subject after that, but let's do a little bit of self-promotion, shameless self-promotion, because I'm all for that. Anybody knows me, sees my face on RotoWare t-shirts, they know I love self-promotion. So Chris, remind everybody where you can reach on social media and then plug everything that you do.
Okay, so it's KO_reporter. I do have a little bit of a split personality on Twitter because I do have a day job, but I tend to talk about fantasy baseball more than the other job because fantasy baseball is more fun. And then Baseball HQ is where you can read me covering the American League East. And as Ray said earlier, the baseball forecaster, some of those player commentaries are mine as well.
All right, Nate, remind everybody where you can be reached and plug everything you're doing.
Yeah, so Nate_Grimm on Twitter. I also have a split personality on Twitter where I talk about dumb things and then talk about dumb baseball things. So, kind of a duality there. And then, Baseball Prospectus. Like I said, we're in the throes of draft prep. I've been writing a column pretty regularly, looking at each position and some of the guys deep in the player pool for each position for mono leagues. But, it's called, we kind of build them as being for mono leagues, but really they're for people playing in drafts that are as deep as the ones that we're in. They're really good. Looks at some guys who are going probably still in the range of like a TGFBI, still going to be guys who get drafted. So I would recommend anybody check them out. The last one we did this week was outfielders. So that's kind of where we're at. And that's where you can find me.
All right. And Michael, remind everybody where you can reach on social media and plug everything you're doing.
I am on Twitter at SPStreamer. I do not have split personality. You can find me on my website, spstreamer.com. I also write for Rotographs. And I actually face Justin's podcast in the next round for podcast bracket. So make sure you vote for me and not for him.
I don't know, man. I'm both of my podcasts in the podcast bracket are on the same side. So the only way that I can face myself, which, as I said, I love shameless self-promotion, is if I beat you. So I'm hoping people rally for me, though you should go listen to the SP Streamer podcast, especially during the season when you guys have those short, streamer podcasts. They're fantastic. Ray, remind everybody where you can reach on social media and then plug everything that you do.
You can find me at RayHQ on Twitter. You can find me in the general manager's office at Baseball HQ most Fridays with my latest article. And I'm also a regular on our podcast, Baseball HQ Radio, through the AL News with Patrick Davitt there every Friday. So that's where you can find me in the next couple of weeks. And First Pitch Florida online next weekend.
Definitely. And I actually just subscribed to Baseball HQ for the first time this year, and I am absolutely loving it, using the RotoLab software for my TGFBI draft coming up. Definitely go subscribe to Baseball HQ. Some of my favorite people in the industry work there. Ryan Bloomfield, Mike Warner. Jock Thompson. It's just so many great people in the industry that work at Baseball HQ, and you should definitely be supporting what they do there. Matt, let people know where you can be reached and where we should support you.
Definitely follow me on Twitter, MATTWI77IMS. You can find a lot of my work on rotofanatic.com. Check out the Data Monster. We have all of our in-house metrics, Paul Mamino, Crosby Spencer, and Carmen Majorano, and of course the insane musings of Michael Govier. You can follow me on NBC Sports Edge and the Turn 2 podcast. We're also in the pod tournament. We're facing a young upstart called Rates and Barrels next round, so we'll try to take it easy on them.
Who are they? I've never heard of them.
That's about it.
Definitely be following that Baseball Pods account at Baseball Pods for this tournament. The votes are great. Love everybody voting for people. If Michael beats me, I'll be supporting him. But for me, it's about getting the lesser known pods known. And I've been able to listen to some amazing pods that I'd never heard before. I listened to Bodega Baseball the other day. If you haven't checked that one out, it's not super fantasy related, but some really, really great conversations. And really great guests. They're having like third base coaches and hitting coaches from the major leagues come on there and talk about what they do. And so while it's not necessarily fantasy related, it's really good information. You can incorporate it into your draft. So go and listen to all those pods on that Baseball Pods tournament. It's definitely worth your time to just go check that out on Twitter. I wish you guys luck, Michael and Matt, who are still in it. Not enough luck to beat me, because I just found out that apparently last night that there's some sort of plaque that goes to the winner. I just thought it was bragging rights. Now I need some hardware. All I've got back here is a globe. I need some trophies. So we got about 7 minutes before we have to move on to the next crew. So let's talk real quick about saves. Saves is always a kind of a cluster in fantasy. And some people just say, well, I'm not going to pay for saves. Some people say, I'm going to pay up for saves. 2021 could be even more difficult than usual. And if you've done early drafts like I've done and a few other people on this panel have done, it's an absolute nightmare. So Nate, what are you doing with saves in terms of strategy for this year?
I think in general, it just depends on your comfort level. I've seen some guys do the kind of, I guess we can call it pocket nines as opposed to pocket aces, where they're grabbing, like at a turn, they're grabbing both, Hendricks and Hader and kind of just set it and forget it. So that's, if you're comfortable finding bats later, that's a nice thing to do, to just not then have to play that game at the end of a draft. You're basically just done for the rest of the time with your saves. I think I trend a little more towards trying to find, where the value, or where I think, a guy maybe is a little bit below market. And also I have some certainty in him as being a guy. So, like in a mock we did the other day, that doesn't always mean, waiting forever or taking guys at the end of a draft. In the mock I did for NBC Sports Edge with Matt, I think I ended up with Aroldis Chapman and Trevor Rosenthal. And, and I was fine with that because, Rosenthal obviously is getting pushed up now that he's signed. So it's finding that sweet spot, I think, in a draft where you're comfortable with paying the price that you're paying, and also you're comfortable with the guy's role. And obviously the number of guys you're comfortable with roles this year is less than ever.
All right, Michael, what are you doing with saves?
Yeah, I mean, I was teamed up with Matt for that tag team league that we did, and we both kind of stressed and agreed that we needed to grab one of those top guys, just because not only is it always a mess, the entire relief pitcher landscape, but we're still kind of early, so we're waiting on a lot of news for a lot of teams. So it only made sense to grab, one of those top 5 guys essentially that has that role. And then later on, just kind of wait and, take some speculative saves. So that's pretty much what I've been doing so far.
All right. And as you guys answer, I'm going to boot you out. Thank you so much, Nate, for joining us. Thank you so much, Michael, if I can find him on my little thing. He disconnected himself. Even better. Matt, I'm assuming you agree with Mike on the saves thing, since you guys were partners in that tag team.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to get one of the top guys. The Hader, the Hendricks, Chapman, Diaz, Iglesias. I'd throw Rosenthal in there. Maybe Brad Hand. I think Rainey's actually the better pitcher, but I think Hand's safe enough. I want one of them, probably one of the top 5. And then I would like a mid-tier, cheaper guy like an Archie Bradley, who he has competition, but I'm pretty confident he takes the job. And then later I like to throw a couple of darts, maybe on a cheap guy like Hunter Harvey, who I think could have the job, or a guy like Jordan Romano, who a lot of people are spending up on Kirby Yates, but we don't know what's going on with the elbow. And Romano's going to give you a lot of strikeouts regardless, so he'll probably get in there and get some saves. So I like to maybe load up on a couple of guys like that. But yeah, I definitely want to at least spend up and get at least one of the top guys.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Matt. And Ray, tell us what your closer strategy is kind of working out to be this year.
I'm just not wired to pay the price for Hendricks and Hader, the top end of the pool there. I took Hader once in the Draft Champions in January just to try it, and it went against every fiber of my being. It's just not what I do. I guess I'm, of the guys who answered so far, I'm more with Nate. I'm more about the second and even third tier, trying to find a pocket where I'm comfortable, or a particular guy I'm zeroed in on. It gets, as they said, it gets a little easier as some jobs start to clarify. But I'm also, sort of with the HQ ethos, I am going to be a snob about skills, and I am all too happy to grab Nick Anderson in the early teens round and not worry so much about whether he gets 5 saves or 20, and know that I'm going to get the great ratios and strikeouts regardless, so that there's a value floor there, and I'll figure out saves later if I have to.
All right. And finally, Chris.
So I mean, just to say something different, because I kind of agree with a lot of what's been said, but I mean, and this is not anything new, but I'm sort of a guy who will eventually hone in on some of my favorite plan Bs. And again, like Ray said, a skills not roles thing. Look for the high skilled guy behind the shaky front guy and settle on it. So I don't know, a few guys that I'm thinking about right now: Taylor Rogers, maybe the return of Joe Jimenez, try to scoop up some of those Plan Bs late, because even in a short year last year, 2/3 of those roles turned over. So if we get 162 or something close to it this year, it's going to be just madness, and you might as well grab a few of those Plan Bs.
Yeah, and one of the things that Ray was talking about when he grabbed Hader early on in drafts, just to try it out, it was a nightmare drafting early closers. If you were drafting like me in December and January, or even back in November, you got a little bit more clarity, but I don't know. I mean, you're in TGFBI, right? So it's yeah. What are you going to do in TGFBI with just not as much information?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it would be repeating sort of what was said before. But I mean, I actually saw Ryan Bloomfield take a role this in one of the, pretty early in one of the expert league drafts, and caught a little bit of flack for it from other smart people. And I'm sort of like, why? I mean, compared to the rest of the world, the landscape. I mean, if I can get a role this at a reasonable price, I mean, he looks great compared to some of the and Trevor Rosenthal, same thing, secure role and skills look great. Maybe he'll fall apart again, but that looks pretty good compared to the rest of the world.
Thank you so much for joining us, Chris.
All right, thanks for having me.
All right, so we're going to have a brand new crew coming in here right now, and it is some of my favorite people in the industry coming together to raise money for Mental Health America. We've already now, passed the, we're at $2,200 or over $2,200 raised at this point. It's fantastic. I've obviously got to start with Mike Curlin, who has a superimposed picture of me on his green screen. My original Twitter picture from 7 years ago or 6 years ago, whatever I started doing the Twitter machine. So Mike, let everybody know where you can reach on social media, and then talk about what you do in the industry.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Justin. Thank you for having me on. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike_Curlin. Of course, I put it right there. I'm just a little bit of everything these days. I mean, lineups are about to get going, so I'm about to really dive deep into lineup stuff in terms of just looking for trends, trying to find news and notes relevant, and trying to just give everybody an edge there on that side of things. I do some video work, take that for what it's worth, and I also do some I write over at Rotoball. I have a Bases Loaded podcast. So yeah, like I said, Prospects Live, I contribute over there. So yeah, just a little bit everywhere. Appreciate you having me on though.
You are a busy man. I'm glad you were able to take out a little time on your Saturday to join us. Also joining us is my good friend Joe Pisapia from the Fantasy Black Book. Welcome to the show, Joe.
What's up? Curlin I just crushed it with this background. I think this should be a new standard on all Zoom, StreamYard, anything. This should be one of the backgrounds that come with. It is just amazing. It's so great. And you haven't aged a day at all. Since this first one. No, not at all. Clearly. And I love when you're sitting in this room doing these shows, Mace, because when you're there and smoking a cigarette and you're just kind of looking at me, asking me questions, I feel like you're my captor. I feel like I am somehow in a place where I may or may not get out of this podcast alive, but I love you anyway.
You give me good fantasy advice, or you will not live to see tomorrow.
What do you really think of that picture?
Yeah. One of these days I'm going to be quitting, but for now, and if I'm sitting out here for 9 hours each day, there's no way I'm not smoking. So I'm sorry. Don't let your children watch this so they don't see that smoking is cool. Also joining us is Nathan. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Justin.
Let people know what you do in the industry and where you can reach on social media.
For social media, handles in the name at Dynasty One Stop, all spelt out. You can listen to me at my podcast, Commissioner's Office, linked at my Twitter handle. Big thing I do is I run leagues. I counted it up. I'm up to over 30 that I commission. Play in a handful of those, but mostly just commission them. And do some behind-the-scenes stuff with Fantrax podcasts and that sort of stuff. But the commissioning is sort of the big thing.
Well, that beats me because there's only 29 TGFBI leagues, and you're already at 30. So,
and most of them are Dynasty, yeah.
Oh man, that's a nightmare. I mean, the nice thing for me is with NFBC is like I hand them the list, I make sure everybody gets in, and then I wash my hands of it the rest of the way. Like there are questions, I just send them over to Derek over at NFBC. But that's a lot of leagues to commission. How do you find the time for that?
I just make it work. A lot of folders and organizations. Honestly, once you get the constitution set up and get the draft going, it's not too bad. You process trades when you get the notification and answer questions, but other than having an obnoxious number of group messages because of it, it doesn't get too crazy except for when you're setting it up. So
I hope you have a separate email account just for that, so you can just like not have to deal with all those.
Yeah, that's my Dynasty One Stop email, not my normal life email.
Yeah, because that would, it drives me crazy when all of a sudden there's a thread of emails where people are like discussing trades or something, and it's like, oh man, I don't have time to deal with like 70 emails today. So I empathize with you,
well, especially when you have all those people to abduct.
Yes, exactly. I only have so much time and so much room in the Mason Murder Mansion.
When you stay out of the abduction business, it really.
I coined that phrase.
Yeah.
I just want to know I coined that phrase.
You did. Joining us as well is one of my favorite people in the industry. Brock Ness Monster is here. Welcome to the show, sir.
Yo, what's up, guys? I'm here representing FTN Fantasy Network. But what I wanted to point out here is I'm wearing my 2019 First Pitch Arizona t-shirt. I just wanted to remind everybody there was a point in time where we got to do stuff like this. And it was awesome. And yeah, here it is.
All right. Remind everybody where you can reach on social media and then plug what you do over at FTN.
Yeah, so my handle is Brock Ness Monster. It's there on the screen. Over at FPN right now, we've got a podcast going. Me and Maddie and Matt, a three-headed monster over there. We've been doing a podcast. We've been focusing on some of the tougher parts of your DC drafts, like a lot of NFBC stuff. We've been talking about stolen bases and saves and all those kind of things that's kind of hard to nail down this early in the draft season. As the season goes on, we're going to have DFS, all the fab articles, pretty much the same thing everybody else is going to have with that great team that we have over there.
Awesome. And I love your guys' podcast. I've been tuning in every week, trying to get the knowledge from you guys because you guys are some really, really great players. Also joining us is Joe Bond. Joe, welcome to the show.
What's going on, man? Thanks for having me, Justin.
Remind everybody where you can reach on social media and then plug everything that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like it says there underneath my face here, at F6P_Joe on Twitter. You can find me at the fantasysixpack.net. I run the site. I don't do a ton of writing anymore. Got a lot of guys helping me do that. And most importantly, a new Dynasty baseball crew that we just got hired this offseason, led by a guest that you're going to have later on this today, Dave Eddy. Good guy there. And yeah, we the main thing I do, since I've kind of taken a step back from writing, I do a lot of rankings, and I run the Fantasy Six Pack Hour podcast, which goes live every Thursday night usually.
And they have come out in full effect to watch this because the comment section is going crazy for Joe. So definitely go check out his podcast and everything they do over at Fantasy Six Pack. So we're going to talk some sleepers today because everybody likes a good sleeper, right? So I asked you guys to make sure you had a list of 3 sleepers to talk about. So let's do the first round here. We'll start with you, Joe. Who is your first sleeper and why?
I'm going to lead off with the guy who plays for the team that's on my hat, and Trey Mancini. I mean, I get the sort of concerns, with the cancer and things like that, but all reports is he's fully healthy, ready to roll. And I mean, come on, his ADP right now is like 176. This guy hit 35 home runs, 97 RBI, and 106 runs while batting 290 in his last full season. Yeah, maybe he doesn't get those numbers, but he's gonna get in the ballpark of that, and that's a terrible Orioles team. I get it, but it was terrible 2 years ago too, and he still hit those numbers. This guy is sleeper, like just flashing in your face. Like, go get him a couple rounds earlier than he's going. And I see his ADP rising as the spring happens and people see him playing.
Yeah, I mean, Mancini is a guy that Joe was really pushing for in our labor drafts, and you heard him cheer, so you know Joe is on board with that. Brock, who's your first sleeper that you're giving away?
Yeah, first guy that I want to talk about is Jesse Winker. He went 355th overall last year, and this year he's going more in like the 220 range. And over the last 2 weeks, he's creeping right up there about 200. So he's getting a little bit of helium so far. But you look at his StatCast numbers in 2020, and there's red all over the page, just completely bloody page. Really looked like he changed his approach in the couple years leading up. It was a guy like a 15% strikeout rate, somebody who was going to, hit 300, but not a ton of power. It looks like he sold out some of that approach for a few more strikeouts and some more power. Hit 12 home runs last year. For like a month of the season was the hottest hitter in baseball. I mean, it was, I know as far as DFS, he was popping at the top of my rankings, day in and day out for a period of time there. So, where he's getting drafted there. Let's see, I got him. What is that like? 15th round, somewhere in that range. I mean, I think he can definitely find a little bit of middle ground between last year's 25% strikeout rate and that 15% strikeout rate from before that, and still give us that 30 home runs. So maybe he hits 280. Maybe he puts it all together, and he's a huge value being drafted that far back.
Do you have any concerns about him being platoons?
I mean, I think that he's maybe the guy that's going to play every day. I think if anybody's going to get platooned, there's so much news that's been out there between him and Akiyama. What are they going to do with that outfield? I think he's going to be the one that, with his approach, the lower strikeout guy like that, if anybody's going to play every day out of those guys, it's going to be him. He's going to be that guy. Maybe he's not going to lead off against the lefties. Maybe they'll push him further down in the lineup. But I think he ends up playing every day.
And I mean, I tend to want to agree with you. So I do believe the DH does come to the National League. I know I'm in the minority on that belief.
Yeah, they can't do that now.
Why not? They put together a whole season in like a week last year. They can't change one rule.
Yeah, I really want to just say that they can't go changing the rules during spring training. Last year was an anomaly for a lot of reasons.
I know why they won't, Mace. I'll tell you why they're not going to do it. They should, but they're not.
They should.
It's the one thing that they can hold on into CBA next year and know that they're going to give up, know that it works already, know that it's a foregone conclusion, and be like, oh, here you go, players. Here's the olive branch of the DH. Yep. So you'll get a win there, and then we'll get a win on something else. So they're just being jerks about it, basically.
All right.
I still being jerks. What?
And also, most people want to see the DH in the National League. That's a weird thing that's come up on Twitter a couple of times that I wanted to mention real quick. My opinion was leave it the way that it was. Leave the leagues be different. It's been like that for a long time. But most people would rather see a DH. So because of that reason, I've changed my stance. Give the people what they want.
Oh, I thought you were going to say because that's what most people want. MLB is going to do the exact opposite.
That's true.
That's where I thought you were going with that one. Nate, give me your first sleeper.
Yeah. So first one, Cole Calhoun. He's going 249, so about 18th round in a 15-team draft. But if you look at his StatCast page from last year and the year before, a whole lot of red. You're looking at a mid-20s power at least, probably a 240-ish average, so not great, but honestly, averages across the board aren't great, so 240 isn't going to kill you. And solid other counting stats. He's not going to give you any steals, of course, but he'll produce. He's sitting at the top of that lineup. And at 249, especially if you're in a league like TGFBI with 5 outfielders, that's solid production from that late of a pick. So, yeah, Calhoun's kind of my first guy there. 87th percent ex-Woba last year, 87 percentile ex-slug. Yeah, he'll give you that pop and not kill your average late. So,
it's those boring old guys that I think people often overlook, and they kind of make good sleepers. So I actually like that call out quite a bit, even though me and Mr. Calhoun have had our differences over the years. Joe, give me your sleeper.
Well, I just want to point out that the other Joe not only has a great hat, but he had a great first pick there of Trey Mancini. He was on my list, so I'll throw him out. But everything Joe said is absolutely right. You start off in the 190s, now he's in the 170s. That first home run he hits is going to bump him into the 150s. By the time you hit opening day, if you're drafting like that weekend before, I'm telling you, he's going to be around 100 something. I'm just telling you, like, it's crazy. It's one of the best early draft values, and I understand why. It's that is a very scary thing. It's not a baseball injury. It's a real world health issue for him with the cancer, and he's at camp though. He's already playing. Yeah. Everything is okay. Like, I'm sure there will be, some hiccups along the road like everybody. I'm sure there'll be some timing things for him. But I mean, he is in a unique position because everybody has timing issues because last year was a complete disaster in terms of stopping and starting. So he is not working at nearly the deficit I think that other players you would normally put in that kind of pool. I'm going to start with Victor Robles in 5x5. Like right now his ADP is 174. And I mean, am I the only person that remembers just like last year that in the 4th round people wanted to like elbow their grandmother out of the way to get this guy? He had 17 home runs, 28 steals. I know he only hit 250, but he's only 24. And I think everybody just needs to calm down, especially with these toolsy guys like him and Buxton. And, when there's injuries and guys miss developmental time, it's tough. It doesn't always happen right away. And we get spoiled when we see a guy like Juan Soto in that same organization just fly past him. But it's not like Victor Robles is all of a sudden like, oh, discarded. He is literally being discarded. And I don't understand why a guy with pop and speed who has a lineup now with a little bit more lineup protection now that they added Bell, they added Schwarber. I don't understand why Victor Robles isn't being drafted a little bit more heartily, and I don't understand why people aren't recognizing the upside that you saw just 2 years ago. Last year was a very strange season. It was a small sample size. Imagine if he had a 60-game sample size where he had 10 home runs and 10 steals, what people would be doing right now, where he would be. So yes, I understand the contact issues. I understand the strikeouts. I get all of that, but at 24 years old, it's just too early to give up on him.
I don't mind that at all, especially if you need speed late in a draft. I mean, how many times are we reaching for guys that we're not really comfortable out their playing time? He may be hit at the bottom of the lineup, but he's going to play, right? So
yeah, and if he hits, who knows if he gets moved up in the time? You just never know. If he really hits, he might have some room to move up.
I don't know if I believe that, given their track record.
Well, you believe a DH is coming in 2 weeks.
That's just true. Crazy things. Who cares what I believe? It's 38 degrees in my office right now. Like, I'm barely here.
Well, that's the temperature you have to keep the bodies at, isn't it?
Walked right into that with Justin.
Totally did.
You would think,
set him up by knock him down.
You would think that it's warmer here, considering Mike's new background picture of me.
It's so good.
It's gonna give you nightmares.
Yeah,
you're looking over my shoulder with that gaze of just. I think it's a murderous gaze now after the conversation.
Just to get adopted, Mike.
There's definitely lotion going in the basket.
Yes. Oh. And I have a lot of skin, so I'm good. I'm his type then. Oh man, this is scary.
We didn't do the kid show before. It's definitely not now.
All right. On that note, I guess I'm next. And and Sleepy K talking sleepers. How original. All right. Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna just stay on brand. I comped drafting this guy a ton to laying on a bed of Legos, for what it's worth. So, because what it is he's one of them. I don't know if I'll get to both of them, but Josh Naylor's a guy. I should have said bed of nails because it was in the name, but a bed of Legos because I'm making my bed with guys that are just so unproven and guys that are just going so late. Like even in 12-teamers, I find myself like, yeah, let's take a shot at the very end of drafts. So Josh Naylor's a guy I just keep falling into. He's going around 350 since like the 1st of February in DC drafts. So that's kind of like the area I focus on was like post 300 guys. And he's a guy who changes mechanics going over to Cleveland last year. And with that change of mechanics, if you actually look like the rolling graphs and such towards the end of the season, everything, WOBA, XWOBA, hard hit rate, sweet spot percentage, everything just kind of trended up as he made that transition over to Cleveland. So you take a guy with the hit tool that he has, because among all players in 2020 with at least 100 plate appearances, Naylor had the 10th best strikeout rate at 11.5%, the 20th best Z contact rate of 93.5%, which is better than guys like Michael Brantley, Bichette, Rendon for reference. And obviously with that came good contact rates and swing strike rates, both of which were top 15, top 30. All in all, so you're taking a guy with that hit tool, giving him a chance to produce more power. And the fact that right now he's projected, now take it for what it's worth, we haven't seen how the lineups have gone so far this spring, but projected back in that 5th spot roughly. He could be playing first base for them, so he could gain eligibility. This is, like I said, a deeper league guy, AL only type. But Josh Naylor is a guy, and he is a former first-round pick, so there is some pedigree there. So all in all, just a guy I keep landing on. And like I said, it's like a bed of Legos. Because you're not happy, it's not comfortable, but you're going to just deal with it.
I don't mind that pick at all. I'm pretty sure I grabbed him in the tag team league.
Yeah, thanks.
With Shelly. So.
you think I wasn't targeting him? I've been talking about him like all off season. Of course I'm targeting him.
Sorry.
No, you're not.
No,
you're not.
I'm sorry.
Don't lie to me. I might,
you
know what? I might call an audible and talk about 2 guys that we drafted just to make myself feel better.
Yeah, see, here, give me another guy right now. Give me your second sleeper.
A guy that I also didn't get. Okay, I guess I am gonna get. Okay, this was the other guy that is like sleeping on a bed of Legos. Is Franchi Cordero, a guy that I'm just known to be in on, and I know it's kind of the cool thing. It's either you're in or you're out on Franchi. I just like to target guys. It's really simple as this. I like to target guys that have tools that can be difference makers late in drafts. Franchi offers power. He offers speed. Yes, he offers a lot of swing and miss in the process, but the Red Sox did just go out and acquire him, giving up Benintendi. And that's, I mean, regardless of what you feel about Benintendi and his skill set, I still don't think that was a little bit to give up in order to get a Franchi in return. So I think Franchi should go there, at the very least, be on a strong side of a platoon. What does he have to worry about? Kike Hernandez or Marvin Gonzalez? I wouldn't bank on those being too much of a threat for playing time. I think Franchi should be given, and plus they have to justify the trade, right? So I think Franchi's going to get the chance to play. It's just a matter of does he stay healthy. And I don't know. Again, he might be a bed of nails because that's just, I don't think that's going to end well, but I'm going to stick to it. He's just a guy that I end up with every time.
Are you worried about his health track record? Because it hasn't been talent that's kept him off the field. It's his only inability to stay healthy.
This is the year, Mason. This is the year. I'm pounding the table, but if I pound it too hard, I'll break something or knock something off. So this is
considering I'm looking at myself on your screen.
Yes.
I tend to want to believe you and agree with you. So
tickle. When things can get weirder.
Joe, who's your next sleeper?
No one's gonna follow this group. I just want to tell you.
Yeah, you're all welcome.
This ended Podapolooza.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Just leave on a high note. There's going to be a theme here with mine, and the next guy for me is Andrew Benintendi at 218 right now. I'm not saying a change of scenery is the end-all, be-all for all of a sudden he'll be good again, but he's a free square. What does it cost you to find out? 26 years old, still a player that I think maybe just a different voice in his ear. And if you look at the track record of what's gone on in Kansas City, you see Whit Merrifield, who was a player that kind of got fixed in the minor leagues and all of a sudden became a guy who had 200 hits. And again, I don't think gets enough credit. You saw Jorge Soler be a guy who always had a lot of talent, and then nobody could figure out why he couldn't really, put it all together. And then he goes and hits 50 home runs when he goes and plays for the Royals. The Royals seem like a good place. Like if you're a hitter with some talent, they're going to figure you out. And I feel like this is a good situation here for him. He has no longer the pressure of Boston on him, no longer the media pressure of being the next big thing there. And let's not forget, he is only 1 full year removed from a 15-20 season. And before that, he had a 20-20 season. And you're telling me I can get a guy post 200 with that kind of upside? Even if he has 15, 12 home runs, steals 20 bases for me and hits 260, in 5x5, that is a huge value, especially like we were talking about before, when you have those 5 active outfielder leagues, you're looking for those guys in Roto that carry that. And I just think it's once again, early to write him off. Forget last year with the rib injury and he hit 100. I get all that. It's scary stuff, boo-hoo. Move on, give him another chance, free square. And I've been tough on Benintendi in the past. I never wanted to pay the premium because I didn't think he was a premium player. But now the inverse has happened. Now he's been suppressed so deep in value that it costs you nothing to find out. So why not see if this is a better version at a much cheaper cost?
All right. Nathan, who's your next guy?
So next guy for me is Jonathan Scope. He's going in the 24th round of 15-teamer, 375. He's at second base, which sucks as a position this year. And at that point, if he's your MI, that's pretty good. He's projected on most projections for low, mid 20 homers, He's going to give you a 250, 260 average, which I checked the 100th best average in 2019 for last full season was 255. So he's hitting around what will probably be 100-ish average, probably. Yes, the lineup sucks. He's projected right now to hit right behind Grossman, in front of like Miggy and Candelario. So he doesn't have a whole lot around him, but at that price, he's practically free. Even if you jump a little bit to get him, he's going to give you some power. He's going to get everyday at bats. At that price, yeah, I would take him. And I have in a lot of drafts. So yeah, Jonathan Scope is my second guy.
He's one of those guys that just consistently gives you back what you invest in him every year. So I love Jonathan Scope. Brock, who's your next guy?
Yeah, next guy I was going to talk about is Evan White, first baseman in Seattle. One of the biggest things about taking guys later in drafts is they're going to need to get playing time. And he's a guy that signed a 6-year extension previous to last season. They're invested in him. He's going to play. The team sucks. They've got no reason to really, give up on him yet. One of their top prospects there. So he's going to have the job opening days, going in drafts around guys that don't have jobs. Garrett Cooper's a guy, Wilmer Flores, those guys could be platoon bats. White is not going to platoon. We should definitely address the fact that he really sucked last year. That's a thing that really happened. But what happened last year, over a 40% strikeout rate, can't really see that continuing, giving his track record in the minors. He's going to have to figure that out at some point, and I really think he will. I'd be surprised that he doesn't. And the thing with him is when he did make contact last year, he hit the ball really hard. He's a good defender. Like I said, playing time's an important thing there. He's a good defender. His sprint speed's like almost 90th percentile or something like that. It's kind of crazy for a first baseman and not super important because he doesn't run or anything like that. But he's a good player. He's going to play. He hits the ball hard. If that strikeout rate normalizes at all, he's going to be good to go there. And I think even the projection systems, if you're looking at the Bat X, which takes into account things like barrel rate and stuff like that, that's got him at a 30% strikeout rate, which is extremely different from the 42% that he posted last year. So just that alone, maybe he's going to be a 240, 250 hitter. And if that power shows up, it could be 30 homer potential there. And also, like I said, that lineup is really bad. Definitely a path for him to be able to be moved up in that lineup and get a little better opportunity as well.
All right, Joe, give me your second sleeper.
Yeah, so mine's going to be Ian Happ of the Cubs. The guy kind of up and down career so far, came up in 2017, was, on fire that rookie season, then down. And then it was kind of jerked around playing time in 2019. And then finally, last year, great, a shortened season, but finally got, back to full playing time and played very well. A 132 WRC plus, well above average hitter. If you looked at it, it's like top 35 for hitters there, and he's being drafted around like the 100th hitter. I think this guy has, 30 home run pop in his bat if it all comes together, and he does get a fully playing time, and he's going really late in drafts, and he could even steal upwards of like 7 to 9, maybe even 10 bases, and like that's just a cherry on top in my opinion.
I love me some Ian Happ. I try to target him every draft. Haven't gotten him as many as I maybe would like, but hey, we still have TGFBI, still have main events coming up. There'll be plenty more opportunities to get Ian Happ on my team. We're raising money right now for Mental Health America. We have already donated. Oh, there we go. We've already raised over $2,300 for Mental Health America. I really, really appreciate everybody's been donating. You get to entered into these raffles for amazing prizes. Let's give some of those prizes away right now. And we're going to start with Joe. You said you'd give away a T-shirt or live draft assistant. So tell us what you're giving away and kind of plug what it is.
Yeah, so I'm wearing the shirt, so we can do different colors. It's bad because I got the microphone right in front of it, but yeah, we gave away an F6P shirt. Once I'll contact you via Twitter as the winner or email, whatever, and we can discuss sizing and colors and things like that, and we'll ship it your way. And then just like live draft advice if we're giving away both. I don't know. Just
it's
somebody.
up to you.
Yeah, I mean, if you're interested, one of our staff members will kind of sit with you via the draft and give you some live draft advice with you.
All right. Well, let's give away both right now then.
Sure.
And the winner is Fantasy Judgment. So I will get in touch with you and give your contact information to Joe, so that way that's
Absolutely.
easy. Thank you so much, Joe. Also giving away a Fantasy Black book. I'm stealing the ITL lingo on that, which I'm sure they're okay with. So, Joe, talk about the Fantasy Black book, what it all entails. It's a fantastic draft guide.
Well, first of all, this is amazing that you're raising this money, and we're going to help out too. Starting on March 1st, where the draft starts, we're going to be donating money to the cause also. So for every black book we sell, we're going to donate $1 to the cause. So we sell 1,000, we're going to give $1,000, baby, like $1,000, 1,000 books, whatever it is. We're going to write that check and be very happy to do it. We're also going to be raising money for St. Jude's the same week, the rest of the week. So that first day is going to be for TGFBI, and the rest of the week is going to be for St. Jude's Children's Hospital. And look, relative position value is a great way to approach all your drafts. It's that one simple strategy. It's got a simple percentage base where you understand where the value is in the pool, where it isn't, and how to really use it as a strategy, because far too much we talk about general value, but not enough of what the player pool looks like this year and what it looks like in this specific format and that specific format. And I think that's why we've had success. So stay tuned for all those links on Monday. If you want to purchase a black book, if you have not yet, because again, you could do it for a good cause. And last year we raised a couple $100, and I know Mason and we worked together last year on this. We're very successful. I want to double it this year if we can and see what we can do. And of course, you can check me out at Fantasy Pros too every day now, talking baseball and the football and everything else. So good stuff here, Mace. Well done as always.
Great. And I mean, I love raising money for charity. I will join you on Monday, and anybody who buys the Friends Fantasy Benefits Draft Guide on Monday, I will donate a portion of that to St. Jude's as well. It's a fantastic organization, and I like to use our profile for as good whenever we can. And so the winner is David Mirza. I will send your contact information over to Joe, so that way he can hook you up with a Fantasy Black book. We have about 15 minutes left in this segment, so I do want to get to everybody's last sleeper. But before we do, I want to give everybody a chance to kind of remind people where they can reach on social media, and then plug all your work so we don't run out of time. Curland, you've now put a third picture of me on the background. So go ahead and let people know what that picture is, in case they're listening to the podcast version, not seeing the video. And then also plug what you do in the industry and say where you can reach on social media.
Well, this picture was inspired by the Mason murder mansion discussion. So I naturally picked the one of you dead from Eno. But unfortunately, it was too big. I guess I couldn't fit the whole picture of Eno killing you. And that really upsets me. So I made sure to include your dead body of the two I had to choose from.
I appreciate that. And that is actually a shirt on RotoWare that I own. You can go purchase that in the Justin Mason collection, which is insane that there's a Justin Mason collection over on RotoWare. So
I think Joe got the most out of all this today from my backgrounds, which I appreciate. I'm glad somebody appreciates what I brought to the table.
I got you, brother. I love it. It's so good.
This was clearly a mistake pairing you two together. It will never happen.
No, this is glorious here. And I've learned a lot here. Like, I know all these guys from Twitter and stuff, but I've also learned that Joe Bond and I can absolutely run a fantasy team together, because everything he said I agree with so much. It's like taking all my guys. So at least if you ever need a co-owner or anything, Joe, and I never want to draft with him because we like the same guy. So there you go.
I'm all in, man. Let's do it.
All right. Yeah. Mike, did you actually plug your work?
No.
Okay,
no, I plugged your shirt. I plugged your work.
Yeah.
Listen, I know how to kiss ass to get where I need to get. All right, it is what it is.
There you go, right?
But in all seriousness, you can find me on Twitter at Mike_Curland. Check out my work at Rotoballer, the Bases Loaded podcast. Like I said, lineup stuff's gonna be happening on Twitter as well as at Rotoballer. Weekly lineup breakdowns, daily stuff on Twitter. That's kind of like the main stuff right now. Like I said, Prospects Live. I'm doing some work over there, helping out. Great team. I think that's about everything. Like I said, there's probably more. Some again, video work is how I like to phrase it, because I open to interpretation. and a lot of it's only a minute or two videos too, so that's kind of disappointing. But anyway, we can move on from there. I appreciate you letting me plug my work, Justin.
Pia, please tell people where you can reach on social media and then plug all your work.
I don't know, but all I know is I gotta get Mike on a podcast ASAP because that's gonna be a fun time. You can follow me at Joe Pia 17, and again, starting March 1st when TGFBI kicks off, that's our big Black Book baseball fundraiser. So get on that if you haven't gotten your copy yet. And help win your league, help out some good causes. Like I said, we're gonna be working with the TGFBI fundraiser on day 1 and St. Jude's the rest of the week. So it'll be 5 glorious days of helping some people out. And I think last year we raised like $400, $500 for St. Jude's just from selling black books. And hey, let's do it. Let's do some good here for people, win some leagues. And this is great here that you're doing this, Mace. And I'll happy. The other thing I can give away is I will clean up the murder room for you too, for an extra $100 there. Anybody who donates $100, I will go out to Justin's house and I will clean up the murder room. So.
I don't know that you want to do that. That seems like a really, really small price to have to come in here and clean up.
Let's start small.
And, ash and things that are on the floor.
Blood and ash. That's going to be my team name for TGFBI this
year. Nathan, remind everybody where you can reach on social media and then plug what you do.
Yeah, you can follow me at Dynasty One Stop. It's below my face, all spelled out. Mostly what I do is I run leagues. You can get in touch with me about whatever part of league you want, whatever rules, and we'll get it built and get it filled. Currently, we've got 15-team Roto, 14-team head-to-head, and a 12-team AL only, 2 dynasties and a keeper fill-in. So if you want to do those, get in touch with me. Or if you want to build your own, you can listen to me and mainly listen actually to the great guests I have over at the Commissioner's Office pod. You can find all of that on my Twitter account. That's where everything's run. So just go there.
All right. And Brock, tell people where you can be reached and what you do.
Yep. Find me on Twitter at BrockNestMonster. You can find all my content all season long, ftnfantasy.com.
All right. And Mr. Joe Bond, please remind people where you could be reached and what you do over at Fantasy Six Pack.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for having me on, man. This is a great cause. I really encourage everybody to donate. I already have, so go ahead and follow suit. At F6P_Joe, fantasy6pack.net, and Fantasy Six Pack Hour, which is every Thursday around 9:00.
All right, let's finish off our last round of sleepers. On this one, I will start it with Nathan. Go ahead and give us your last guy.
Yeah, so I tend to avoid rabbits, but when you're giving them to me for free in the 28th round, Miles Straw is projected to start every day for the Astros. He'll be at the bottom of the lineup, but it's a good lineup, except for pretty much their 9-hitter. So he's got probably 20 to 30 steals projected. And he's going to not kill your average, unlike a lot of those speed guys, at least if the projections are to be believed. So unless you think Steven Souza Jr. is going to challenge him, they have no one on their bench that looks like they're going to risk playing time. Sorry, Mike is making me laugh again. So
I like how he's moving out of the way. He's like, I don't need to be on camera. I'm just going to let the background do the talking.
Yeah. But yeah, he's going in like 450. So that's the 28th round. A bench outfield bat or an everyday guy. He's going to give you some speed, not kill your average, and probably turning over that Astros lineup, give you plenty of runs. So that's my third guy.
I like it as long as they don't sign Jackie Bradley Jr., but it just feels like that is the guy they're going to bring in and ruin, Miles Straw's sleeperness. Speaking of sleeperness, Mike Kurland has added a new picture, which everybody's giggling about. And so why don't we throw it to him next? To picture for those listening on the podcast version of this, it's a picture of me cuddling with Alex Fast. So, Mike, give me your last sleeper. You're on mute.
He's got that great mic and
Perfect.
I can't hear him.
Yes, I know it's upsetting, but yeah, the best part is I came ready for two pictures, and while people were talking, I used my time wisely to find these last ones.
See, this is why you are so productive in the fantasy industry and can work at so many spots. Because you take every little time you've got and you address it into your game.
I wanted to finish strong, and you mentioned sleepers. I found it looked like you were coddling him to sleep. I decided this was a perfect picture to finish on. And it's actually, on top of that, I'm kissing more butt by bringing up a Giants player in Austin Slater. I really like Austin Slater really late. More of an NL only type right now because I do think he is on the short side of a platoon entering the season. But we saw him perform really well and actually finish the season off strong prior to injury and getting everyday at bats. He was earning those prior to, going down to this injury. Came back or kind of played a little bit, then never really played again. It was a really weird finish to the season for him. But we saw a lot of positive changes. He actually had a change in his batting stance and some of his mechanics. Started off more close to almost like a loaded position compared to keeping his hands low and having to load during the swing. So with change in the mechanics, you saw the average launch angle increase to a career best 10.3 degrees. I believe it was. I'm double checking. 10.9 degrees. I apologize. But with it came a career best barrel rate. The sweet spot percentage was at its highest. This also came with a career low strikeout rate, career high walk rate. So again, everything kind of improved. He also showed a change in his plate approach. He was more aggressive, swinging at more first pitch strikes than ever before. More fly balls, more line drives, less ground balls, pulling the ball more than ever before. You see where I'm going with this. There was just a lot of positive changes and a lot of it that correlates where it wasn't just like a swing change or a mechanical change. There was also a production change that came with changing his approach and everything else. So Austin Slater's a guy that I just ultimately like falling back on in deeper drafts. Again, I know the playing time might not be there right away, but we saw him earn it last year, and there's no reason why that team would hold him back from trying to earn it this year. We could be seeing a Yaz type of thing. He's 28 years old. This is when Yaz kind of broke out for the Giants in his year 28 season. So year 28 season, 28-year-old, however you want to word it. You get my point.
The year of our Lord, 28.
Yes. My point is it's hard to be serious after having such a fun time. But my point is I believe there's a chance here for Slater to finally get back to where he was headed in 2020, and it comes at pretty much free spot. So that's where I'm at.
My only concern with Slater is the playing time. It feels like the Giants are trying to be the West Coast version of the Tampa Bay Rays, which means they're going to platoon as many people as they can, and that hurts everybody's value. But injuries happen. If the DH does come to the National League, that could open up another spot. I know no one here believes or agrees with me that the DH will show up, but I like that as kind of a late pick that you can get as a sleeper. Mr. Joe Bond, I forgot at the beginning of this, I had two Joes, and I just started.
We've managed it despite your incompetency.
Yes, you guys have been so professional while I am just a slacker and a loser, obviously. But Mr. Joe Bond, give me your last sleeper.
I was going to go with CJ Crone, but I feel like that's boring. That everybody knows that one's a sleeper pick. I'm going to go, and his ADP is pretty moderate, but it's Dylan Moore, Seattle. I mean, this guy could be a 2020 guy. Second base is just atrocious. Yeah, he's going to be battling Shed Long, however you pronounce it. I think he wins that one as the better defensive player. I mean, it's hard to find, as Joe alluded to earlier, it's hard to find power speed later, especially at a bad second base position. I think he's somebody worth taking a little bit earlier than his ADP just for the upside.
All right, there you go. Mr. Joe Pisapia, who is your last sleeper?
Well, I got a guy for you, Mace. I got a guy who's going at around 250, who's going to lead off for a good offense. He's going to have a 400 on base, so in those OBP leagues, you got to bump him up way past there. He's probably going to score 90 runs if he stays healthy, and it's Brandon Nimmo. Yeah, he's not going to have a lot of RBI, but he could probably steal 10 bags if everything breaks right. He could probably hit 15 home runs or something around there. And I think you take 2019 with all the injuries and with the sophomore slump stuff and throw it away. Last year, he hit 280. He had that 400 OBP again. He's an on-base machine, which means he's going to score runs. And, I mean, it's so valuable to have those guys at the top of the order. And this is the DFS person to be coming out, too, and looking at the value of Nimmo and just is it the most sexy pick? Is it the sexiest one? No, it's not. But you know what? It's going to be a guy you could put in there and kind of leave him, and he's just going to be incredibly productive. And my favorite part of this pod right now that we're doing is watching Mike search for the next image whenever somebody else. That has become my new thing to watch. It's like a watch party where like I'm watching Mike try to find the next thing. But Nimmo's that last guy. So there you go. Nimmo, Benintendi, and Victor Robles. Those are the three outfielders that I think you can get late in drafts, and they can really actually be very good returns on your investment.
I love Brandon Nimmo. I just hope to God the Mets don't put him in a platoon. That's my
I don't think that's the plan, man. I mean, I don't see that happening. I think they are going to need him out there too, especially with Dominic Smith. There's every reason to be concerned because it's the Mets, and as a Met fan, I can tell you there's always reason to be concerned. I'm a self-loathing, hating Met fan myself, but Nimmo I think has really proved that he could be that guy, and I think he's going to be a really good draft pick, right, hitting in front of Lindor in that lineup.
All right, I've got Nimmo everywhere, so I'm right there with you. Brock, finish us out with your last sleeper.
Yeah, so kind of sticking with the theme of snatching a couple extra bags later on in the draft there. A guy going about the 15th round that I've been keeping my eye on is Hunter Dozier for the Royals. Is projected to hit in the bottom third of the lineup right now. And he didn't hit the ball really hard in 2020, but in 2019, a full season, he had 83rd percentile exit velocity. The last time we had a real season. So we know he can hit the ball hard, and he actually has a pretty decent sprint speed. I think 80th, 83rd percentile, something like that. So, maybe, last year he ran a little bit, 4 stolen bases in whatever the third of a season that we had. So if you extrapolate that out a little bit, 12 stolen bases, probably not there, but there's a chance at 10. And I think if I can fill my corner infield spot with the guy that's probably going to hit 25 home runs and has a path to like 10 stolen bases, that's pretty sweet. And that's another offense that is not great. They're just in love with Sal Perez's 290 on base percentage in the third spot there. But if that becomes a problem, if there's a little bit of regression from Sal, and I don't know, he's getting old, there's definitely a spot. Hunter Dozier, year on year, the walk rate is climbing each year. I think he could be a pretty solid hitter this year. And if everything works right, maybe he's hitting third for that team by the end of the year.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us and giving away some sleepers, and Joe and Joe for giving away prizes. Really, really appreciate it. Make sure you're following all these guys on Twitter as I kick them out unceremoniously. And bye, everybody. There we go. We are raising money for Mental Health America. I've raised over, $2,300 so far. $2,366.30. Keep donating. You can see on the ticker where to donate. It's on PayPal at Justin Mason Fantasy, and then on Venmo at Justin Salinger. Every dollar donated will go to Mental Health America, and you can win raffle prizes for every dollar you donate. You can get a raffle ticket for these amazing prizes. And we've got a new crew coming in. I think we got some stragglers. There's only 2 right now, but right now we've got 2 of my favorite people in the industry. That is Michael A. Stein, who won a prize already. So I'll be hitting him.
Really?
Yeah. You want a T-shirt and live draft assistance if you want it. So I will send you Joe Bond's information after this is all done, so you can get hooked up with that. But let people know where you could be reached on social media, and then kind of plug what you do in the industry.
Well, sure. My name is Michael Stein. I'm the Chief Justice of Fantasy Judgment, which is a dispute resolution service for fantasy leagues. We help out when it comes to trade disputes and arguments amongst league members. If you got a rogue commissioner who's just violating all of his own rules and colluding and messing things up in your league, I'm a lawyer by trade, and I will write you a legal decision resolving your issue. I'm totally impartial, unbiased. There's no collusion hoax whatsoever. My decisions are not binding in actual courts, so do not cite me in the Southern District of New York. But I am happy to provide advisory opinions to help keep the integrity of fantasy leagues. You can find me at Fantasy Judgment, but you got to make sure you spell judgment correctly. It's JUDGMENT. That's me on Twitter. You can get me on Facebook at facebook.com/fantasyjudgment. Email address, michael.stein@fantasyjudgment.com. Make sure you spell Stein correctly. It's EIN. Remember, I before E, except after C, and all Jewish names. And yeah, so and one thing I will say, I've been doing this for 10 years now, writing decisions and helping leagues out. One of my clients last year actually recommended I provide a different service this year. He actually suggested I do a video decision where I would be dressed in a robe. I'd probably have to create a superficial court background and actually give my decree in live video to basically be the Judge Judy of fantasy sports. And fun fact, Judge Judy is an alum of my law school, so I am the second most famous fake judge from New York Law School.
Well, that is fantastic. And you donated your services as part of Ralph Prizes. We'll be giving away that here in a little bit. So donate so that way you could be eligible to win that service, which is fantastic. I don't think anybody else in the industry does that. So that's really, really cool. Also joining us is Derek Van Riper, one of my favorite people in the industry and the best voice in the industry for sure. Derek, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Justin. Thanks for putting this together again. It's a great event, and happy to help try and raise some money for a great cause. Looking forward to doing this. And, it's really hard to follow Michael. That was a fantastic introduction of what he does. I was waiting to see if there's been a Judge Judy where there was a fantasy league payout at the center of an episode, but I haven't seen that episode yet if it's floating around out there. It seems like the kind of thing that would happen eventually, though, in our business.
I've pitched it to her, but she's not taking ideas right now.
Well, anyone who hasn't heard or seen me before, I'm with The Athletic. I host a few podcasts, Rates and Barrels, The Athletic Fantasy Baseball Podcast, Fantasy Baseball in 15, work with a lot of awesome people there. I do some writing and rankings at The Athletic as well, so people can check that out on Twitter. The handle's on the screen there, just at Derek Van Riper. If you could spell Derek correctly, then you can probably spell Van Riper correctly.
That's the Zoolander spelling, I believe, right?
That's the Zoolander spelling. Zoolander and Jeter.
And also joining us is Mike Carter. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I have the plainest name of everyone, so this shouldn't be too difficult.
What's your Twitter handle? Where can people reach you and talk about what you do?
I am at MDRC0508 on Twitter, the most ridiculous handle out there probably. And I work for Roto Fanatic. I do all the bullpen reporting for Roto Fanatic. And I also write part-time for another website called The 9-Inning Know-It-All, which is just basically narrative nonsense diarrhea on paper that I put down a couple of times a month. They let me do it. They like it. So I enjoy doing it. It's really a pleasure to be on with you guys. I've been following all of you for a really long time. So I'm a little awestruck right now. So happy to be here.
Don't be too awestruck.
No, I know.
So we are going to be talking about some small sample size heroes. 2020 was a small sample, right? I mean, we only had 60 games. Most players didn't play all 60. It's hard to kind of buy in to some of the huge breakouts. So I want to get kind of some of your guys' takes on whether these guys are legit or not. And we're going to start off with one of the most polarizing players just in general because of who he is. And then I think also in the fantasy community, because Trevor Bauer is one of those guys who he has, I comp him to the BJ Upton of pitchers, a guy who gets going, is doing really well, has got his mechanics locked in, really figuring out what to do on the mound, and then all of a sudden, for no apparent reason, changes things and starts doing something completely different. And we've seen that over the course of his career, in season and in different seasons. So I'm going to start with you, Mike. Do you believe that Trevor Bauer is the ace that people are drafting right now?
I think it's a really tough call, not to be diplomatic, but I think he's a tinkerer, right? So you never know exactly what he's thinking or what he's going to do. Who is he is the question that I always am asking. In 19, he had 34 starts and 253 strikeouts, which plays anywhere, but his ERA was over 4. He was elite last year in a small sample size. Is he somebody that you're comfortable taking as the fourth starter off the board? I'm not. he eats innings. The team context is something that we want to look at too, but I'm far more comfortable taking somebody like Giolito or Nola as my SP4 as opposed to Bauer.
DVR, are you the same way? Because that's how I feel. I'm not going to touch him in the first or second round. It just, to me, I want a guy who I feel really safe about, and I don't feel safe about Trevor Bauer.
Yeah, I think just based on my expectations for him, Bauer would have to fall probably to the 2-3 turn of a 15-team league before I would start thinking about him. It doesn't mean that he's a bad pitcher. It doesn't mean that what he did last year wasn't actually a sign of some growth. I think the strikeout rate going up was really the function of two things. One, his use of pine tar, which he will likely continue to use to keep the spin rate up on the fastball. Like, why wouldn't he, right? If he's not going to get in trouble for it and everyone else is doing it, he's going to keep doing it. And two, I think it was part of the schedule bump that we saw. Like some of the pitchers in the Central especially cruise through easy schedules. And I think when you start factoring in all the things that the league was dealing with as a whole, not having the in-game video, which some players were really vocal about, getting some of those tools back, I think is going to help hitters as a whole. So some of the jumps in K rate we saw from pitchers last year are probably going to come down a little bit just from the league as a whole, striking out a bit less. All this is a long way of saying, like, I look at Bauer, like going to LA is a good thing. Like that helped his projection a little bit. It got the ERA under 4 in the bat. I see like a 375, 120 sort of guy, right? That whip's going to be good, not great. The ERA is going to be pretty good. The thing that Bauer brings, this is the reason why I think people can justify him where they take him, the innings, right? As much as we are worried about anyone's skills from year to year, we're also this year more worried about innings than ever before. And I think for all the tinkering, all the attack, all the stuff that Bauer does, I think we trust him to be healthy, at least trust his arm to be as healthy as any pitcher in the pool right now. I think we look at him as a guy that obviously wants to pitch every fourth day. The Dodgers don't really need to do that to him. They got plenty of depth. If most of those guys stay healthy, they're never going to have to cut down to 4 every fourth day for Bauer. So I think you could justify it based on volume, but we're talking about a guy who's tinkered his entire career, and he's got 5 seasons with an ERA over 4. He was trying when that happened. So I think there's a lot more variance here than I would like for a guy that goes the end of round 1 in a lot of drafts right now.
Yeah, he in the tag team NFBC league I was in, I think he went pick 10 or 11, something like that. And I was really, really grateful that I was not put in a position where I even had to think about him drafting at the top of the draft there. So I just can't do it myself. What about you, Michael? Can you pull the trigger on Trevor Bauer?
Well, one thing I wanted to mention, Justin, you brought up BJ Upton before. And I have on good authority that Trevor Bauer has submitted a name change application to the Supreme Court of Fantasy Judgment. He is looking to become Melvin Bauer as well. So, he is absolutely being consistent there. As a Mets fan, you want to talk about being a polarizing figure. This was a classic case of I really was happy that they were pursuing him, but I'm really glad they didn't get him, especially for $40 million. So, Bauer is a guy, I know we it's hard to sometimes correlate fantasy and reality here. He's somebody that it's going to be impossible for him to live up to that contract. But I think as Derek was saying, he's somebody that is going to be motivated to try. So, he is going to be a guy that's going to want to take the ball and pitch every 4th or 5th day, whatever the frequency is. He's not going to want Dave Roberts coming out and taking the ball out of his hands. So, I think that, just from a pure motivation factor, he, more than almost anybody in the league, is going to look to prove everybody wrong and prove the Dodgers right. So while his, past history does not show that he's, an elite top 5 starter because he hasn't had many seasons with good ERAs, he has shown the ability to do it. That being said, I'm with you guys. I'm not taking him till maybe the end of the second round. I do not want, unless I'm, looking to take a couple hitters right off the bat. The only way he's my SP1 is if it's in the late second or early third round.
How much do you guys feel that monster bullpen will factor into getting his innings pitched eaten into, if at all?
I don't think much with him. I think because he has the ability, he has the endurance and he can throw 110, 120 pitches, every 5 days. I don't think that's really going to affect him. And plus, his personality is unlike most other players. I think he's going to be able to manipulate Dave Roberts and say, "You're paying me all this money, let me earn it."
Yeah, I'm not too worried about that pen eating into Bauer's workload either. It's all about his own efficiency, and I think he's efficient enough to consistently get through 6 innings, even though I would like that walk rate to be lower. It would be nice.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next guy. One of my favorites, someone I'm buying into, that is Mr. Randy Arozarena. So, the Honorable Michael A. Stein, are you buying in on the small sample of Randy Arozarena?
Absolutely not. I see why you would, and he certainly had a hell of a second half and playoff run last year. But much like all the other Tampa Bay Rays, I feel like he's a flash in the pan, and I don't think you can expect over 162 game season to see that type of consistent production from him. I understand what we saw was very electric and is enticing. But the Rays squeeze out the most out of all their players out of any franchise in the league, and I think they got a lot out of Arozarena last year. I don't know that they can do that over a full season. So I'm not saying he's not going to be a productive, fourth outfielder or maybe deep utility option, but I would not spend a high draft pick on him expecting him to replicate what he did over the course of a full season.
Oh, that hurts my heart.
I'm sorry.
DVR, come to bat for me.
I'm in on the Arozarena where he's going right now. I think the concern I have is I could see him being the kind of guy that shoots up 10 or 15 picks in ADP between now and the last drafts before opening day. I think the projection systems are very favorable. So you have power, you have speed, you got a solid batting average. My biggest concern with any player who's only been in the big leagues for, we're talking about a partial season basically, when you add it all together, is that the league hasn't completely solved him yet. If you look at some of the underlying numbers, a lot of the damage Randy Arozarena has done so far has come against fastballs. We did see him hit a few breaking pitches out during the postseason. I think he hit a curveball out against Zach Greinke, homered off a pretty bad slider from Tony Gonsolin. So it's not like he's never hit a home run against the breaking pitch in the big leagues, but it's the kind of thing in the scouting report, as teams get more looks at him, he's going to see different things than he's seen so far. I think he's a collective miss for our community as analysts, though, because when you look back at what he was doing in the upper levels of the minor leagues before he went to Tampa Bay, he was 50 to 60% better than a league average player, showing power, speed, and average. I don't know why we weren't all into this guy before he got the opportunity to play, because on paper, he was doing everything we're looking for.
Yeah, I think it may have just had to do with a lack of prospect pedigree, and those kind of guys can get missed. But what he does have is elite ability to recognize pitches coming out of a pitcher's hand, and I'm going to bet on that all day long. Mike, are you with me?
I want to believe. I want to drink the Kool-Aid. Having been burned on people like him in the past in many years of playing fantasy, I'm not sure that I can take him as my number one outfielder. I think Derek's right. I think the price is going to become inflated due to the recency bias and people's having great memories of what happened in the playoffs. I love the talent. It's there. Does he capitalize on that this year, or does he end up on the side of a platoon? You never know with Tampa. In my opinion, uneducated opinion, I prefer Meadows to him just because I think Meadows has proven it once before, and I think that I might be able to get him as an outfield 2, whereas I think Arozarena is going to be outfield 1 for a lot of people. The risk is really high for me there. I know there's risk baked into everything that we do, and we can never be 100% certain. The talent is tantalizing. I think if he stays where he is, I'm in with like what Derek said. I think I would take him there, but I think he's going to be up in the top 50 picks at some point as we start getting into real draft season for everyone. And I just don't think that I will take him there.
I was going to ask you, I know you like Starling Marte too, like traditionally at least. If Arozarena gets up to Starling Marte's price and that becomes a legit toss-up like late in round 3, who do you take?
Ooh.
That's tough, man.
That's very tough.
I'm probably gonna go Arozarena just because of Marte's health history. He hasn't always been the guy who could stay on the field. I love Marte. I want both. If I'm on that 3-4 turn and that's the price, I might just double tap on both of them and be like, okay, I've dressed my outfield. Now it's time to go. Now, if I've started with an outfielder, that's a different conversation. If I start with Betts or start with a Soto or something like that, then obviously I can't make that kind of, I guess they'd be at the front end. So, but either way, that one hurts my heart, DVR. I'm supposed to be asking the tough questions. That's a good one. I love Arozarena. I took him on the 4 or 5 turn in that tag team league with Shelly V as my partner, and we were pretty stoked to get him there.
I'd definitely go him over Marte, and also because of just the divisions. The NL East is loaded, and I know we're playing. The teams are going to be playing the other divisions regularly this year, but the AL East I think is a lot easier to navigate in terms of opposing pitching than the NL East is this year.
I think that's fair as well. Let's move on to the next guy, and there's been no more polarizing player, at least in the fantasy industry, because of maybe one or two people, than Zach Plesac. And I know Dave McDonald is watching because he's already commented in the chat. So let's talk some Zach Plesac. DVR, is he an ace like some people believe, or is this just small sample size?
I think he showed us in 2020 that there's a lot more there than we thought coming out of 2019. So I think you could argue now that there might be like a true fantasy ace upside. I don't know if that's where he's really at just yet. I mean, I think there's so much to like about Cleveland pitching. They're as good as any organization as developing pitching and putting guys in positions to succeed. There's a couple things that I'm cautious about. I think with Plesac, it's the velo dipping a little bit on the fastball. It's that we're talking about an all-time high price based on 8 starts. Now, 8 starts, if we're in the middle of a season, we're making trades, right? 8 starts happens by about mid-May. So we're making decisions that are pretty significant on the trade front after 8 starts in a normal season when we can make trades. I still think we're reaching a little bit. I would see him as more of a 75 to 100 range sort of guy. Like if I were trying to guess the ADP back in September, I would have said that's where Plesac's going to end up. He's creeping up higher than that. So it's just a case of too much for my liking, even though I believe in some of these skills. I think the ERA projections are a little higher than they should be because I don't know if they're fully capturing all the skills growth that Plesac has shown. And I'm not sure he's a finished product yet. So that's pretty exciting too.
Right.
I'm just out at the price. Maybe I get him in an auction, but in a snake draft especially, I'm not going to have him.
Yeah, and like David Swan said in the comments, it is the P word, Plesac, and Dave McDonald's in there as well, asking you guys to be nice to him. So, Mr. Dr. Mike Carter, right?
Yeah, right.
And so, because you have the TR in the Twitter handle, what is your diagnosis of Zach Plesac?
Well, first of all, I'm terrified that Dave McDonald's going to drive 6 hours and beat the living shit out of me for what I'm about to say. So, Dave, please leave me alone. I'll get you a nice 6-pack. Leave me alone. I like Plesac a lot too, but I think that I worry about the same thing: low sample size. The low BABIP is going to regress, I think, obviously. And to be really honest, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, but when I compare him to other starters, I really see him as Kyle Hendricks in a lot of ways. There's a lot of things that kind of remind me of him. And I'd rather take Hendricks later based on what the ADP has been so far for Plesac. I mean, I've seen him going in the 60s in the NFBC stuff, and I think that's a little high for me. I wouldn't mind having him as like my SP3, but I'm not going to get him as an SP3. And so I'm probably going to end up passing on that. Although I could just, my phone's going to blow up here in about 30 seconds with Dave. But I really like him. And I agreed with what DVR said about pitching in Cleveland. I mean, it's really hard to go wrong with a Cleveland starter in a lot of ways, just based on their pedigree and what they've done over the last 10 years. However, on this one, I think I need to pass. I think I need to see more. Which is what a lot of people have said about me too. So I'm okay with letting Plesac kind of pass and go to someone else who's willing to take that risk more than I am.
All right, Mr. Chief Justice, what are your thoughts on Plesac?
Well, I got my bailiff here with me. This is my dog Lucy. I've always been a Plesac fan, so the audience will be happy to hear that I was high on him as a rookie a couple years ago. I still am high on him. I think that his ADP is a little bit of an overreach at the moment, but I think that there's enough there that I've actually drafted him as my 5th or 6th starter in a couple of leagues that I've done already. But in a way, I almost feel like Savali is a better value right now. I think that the upside on him, I'm buying into more because I'm getting him much cheaper than I would Plesac. So while I am in on him, I don't think I would overreach just yet, but I do think that Plesac has the ability down the road to become, the next in line of all those Cleveland starters that we've seen, elevate so quickly.
And I tend to kind of agree with you guys that I'm very intrigued by what I saw last year. I do worry about that the guys with the elite control have a little bit less margin for error and things can go bad more quickly. And I also do worry about the small sample size of just it being 2020. So I'm willing to take the gamble, but like someone just said in the chat, Anthony, Police Act's going anywhere from the 4th to the 9th round in 12-team OCs. He went in the 9th round in a draft last night in an OC. That spot, I'm okay with taking the gamble because he's not going to be my first or second or maybe even third starting pitcher at that point. So I'd be much more willing to take the gamble there. Let's talk real quick about the next guy. That's Luke Voit. Led the majors in home runs last year, I believe. He's always had talent, but has always had trouble staying on the field and then playing time issues. Seems like he's the everyday first baseman, at least to start the year in New York. So, Mr. Chief Justice, you're a New York guy. Tell me, what do you think about Luke Voit?
Well, I should preface this. I've already disclosed that I'm a Mets fan, and as much as I'm a Mets fan, I hate the Yankees even more. So, when Luis Gonzalez hit the bloop in 2001, I was as happy about that as I was as Jesse Orosco striking out Marty Barrett. So,
well, don't hold back, Chief Justice.
I will not. I will not. It's a good therapy session for me. Luke Voit is a guy I actually have in a couple keeper leagues, and I'm still debating what to do with him because I am buying in on him. I think the power is legit. This is what the Yankees do. As much as I hate him, I have to give him credit. This was a nothing trade a couple years ago. It was just a minor piece for a minor piece, and look what he's turned into. I mean, the power is legit. It's there, and the opportunity is there for him too to play every day. I mean, Greg Bird is a distant memory. They got Urshela at third. Miguel Andujar is the one who's going to have to try to find some playing time somewhere. But Voit is the guy. I think he will stay healthy. And hitting in the middle of that lineup, I think we can easily see a 40 home run season from him over 162 games. So I am buying in on him, and I think that the value you get for him is pretty good because there's obviously other first basemen with better name value and maybe some better overall stats in the other peripheral categories. So Voit is a guy I think you could sneak in later in rounds and get elite level power. So I am in on him.
All right, DVR, tell me what you think about Luke Voit.
If you go back to 2019, Luke Voit was two different players. He was the guy we saw in 2020 before he suffered an abdominal injury in early June, and the splits really bear that out. So I think last year at the discount, when Luke Voit was a fringy top 150 guy, it was an easy call to try to get him as your late first baseman or your corner who come in and exceed expectations. Now I feel like you're just paying full freight. I think the skills are real, but the health concerns you outlined, Justin, are legit. It wasn't the abdominal in 2020. It was a foot. And I don't know if there's actually been any sort of corrective measure, if there was a surgery or something that actually fully treated that issue. So you just worry that it's like a plantar fascia type thing that might linger for a while and always cost him time. And because the Yankees have good depth, because they develop players really well, even cast-off type players, you look at that team and go, why wouldn't Mike Ford get occasional playing time if Voigt's banged up, right? If they trust their ability to develop that depth, they're going to do whatever they can to keep Voit healthy. All of that's a long way of saying, like, I like the player. I don't love the price. I think I could get him in a draft, but more likely than not, I'm either getting a second or third pitcher in that spot. Maybe I'm getting my first closer in that spot, and I'm probably just missing out based on how pieces fit together in a snake draft. And the guy that Chief Justice mentioned that I really like in that Yankees lineup is Urshela. I think he's basically getting treated the way Voit was being treated a year ago, and those skills are real. I mean, those plate skills got better in the shortened season. He hits the ball hard. He's a great defender, so he's not really in danger of losing playing time, and he doesn't carry that same injury risk that Voit does. So as much as I loved Voit last year, that's how much I love Gio Urshela this year.
I mean, he carries a little bit of injury risk because he's coming off of an injury, right? Yeah, he had off-season surgery on the elbow. I think he's going to be all right, and I took him in that tag team league that I've referenced a few times already, so I believe in him, and I think you're right, man. He's going to be one of those Yankees that are on the field for every single game as long as he is ready to start the season, and we should know pretty quickly here if we start seeing him in spring training games that he is. Mike, what are your thoughts?
I think his ADP is a little bit high, but I've sort of given myself pause on Voit. I mean, I hear what everybody's saying about him, and I respect that. But he's got 57 home runs in over 200 games as a Yankee, so that power is very real. Struggled a little bit against lefties last year, although not super bad. 229 is livable, I guess. But the question that I have is that the first basemen that are going above him, I have some questions on. Guys like Rizzo with the back, Bellinger with the shoulder. There's some risk baked in there with that. And so I feel like Voit might be less of a health risk than those guys. And he seems to be going as like the 6th or 7th first baseman off the board, which is not, to me, a price that I'm not unwilling to pay. I have a tendency to kind of wait on first base, though, and I think I need to adjust that a little bit because I think I'm going to end up with some crappy guys. And so I'm sorry?
I think first base is a lot shallower this year than most years.
As I'm learning the hard way, yes. But I like him, and I think that I would pay for him in that round. But there is a lot of competition for at bats in that Yankee team now. All of a sudden, he's probably not going to get DH at bats as we look at it. So he's going to have to play first base, and if he gets banged up or dings up that foot again, it could be an uphill battle for him. But I like him where he's going right now.
All right, we are raising money for Mental Health America. On the ticker below on your screen, you can see where to donate. PayPal, justinmasonfantasy@gmail.com, Venmo @Justin Salinger. At this point, we've raised over $2,600 for Mental Health America. Every dollar donated goes to that organization. It does a lot of really, really great work. And every dollar you donate gets you a raffle ticket. And we're going to give away a prize right now. Let's see. Gotta run my little randomizer over here. And Peter Pratt, you have won the resolution services of Chief Justice Michael A. Stein. I will connect you guys later on, so that way you can get that. We're also going to give away a Baseball HQ subscription with a forecaster from Ray Murphy, who was on earlier in this Podapolooza. And so let's do one more randomizer. And Rupert Henley, you have won a Baseball HQ subscription and the Baseball HQ forecaster that goes along with it. Like I said in the last or a couple segments ago, I'm a Baseball HQ subscriber for the first time this year, and I'm really, really enjoying it. They do a lot of great work over there, so definitely go support them over at Baseball HQ. We've got 15 more minutes, so we've got time for at least one more. But before we do, I want to give you guys a chance to again promote where you can be reached on social media, and then plug all your work. I'll start with you, Dr. Mike Carter.
Well, first of all, before I say any of that stuff, I think it's amazing what you're doing with this stuff, and I appreciate that. A lot of people don't know, but in my day job, I'm a principal of a therapeutic day school. So I work with kids that have social and emotional disorders who don't fit into their regular schools. And so mental health is something that's really important to me, as I know it is to you, Justin, as well. I've been doing that for 26 years. And so it's a real soft spot in my heart. And I thank you for shining a bright light on that and using your platform to be able to do that. You can obviously find me at MDRC0508 on Twitter. Last year at this time, I wasn't even on Twitter. So I'm learning the hard way around that stuff and getting a lot of great experience working with the guys at Roto Fanatic. They allow me to attack bullpens. I just did a piece last week. It was about 3,800 words on bullpens. Every bullpen in baseball we took a deep dive into and looked at, and I was chewing on my fingernails as I was writing it. There's a lot of bad situations out there, and I also work part-time over at the 9-Inning Know-It-All, as I pointed out earlier as well. I appreciate anybody that takes time to read those words and take a look at what we do. It's a lot of fun. I'm having a blast doing it. I never thought that I would be in a position where I would be able to write about fantasy sports or even, be on the same stage essentially with people like you guys. So I've been following all of you for a really long time. I've accosted Derek a couple times at First Pitch things in Chicago. And so it's a real pleasure for me to be here with you guys. And I'll stop talking now so other people can, but really appreciate the opportunity to be on with you guys.
Derek, remind people where you can reach on social media and talk about everything you do.
At Derek Van Riper on Twitter. I host a few podcasts. One called Rates and Barrels with this Eno guy and Britt Giroux.
Never heard of him.
As well. Yeah, so Eno murdered Justin on a shirt. I'm actually just grateful Kenny didn't draw me into the background with a microphone, like podcasting and ignoring the murder that happened next to me. Like I'm grateful that I wasn't just brought into that. But the Athletic Fantasy Baseball podcast, Fantasy Baseball in 15, rankings, articles, everything you could possibly want at The Athletic. Even if you don't like me, you'll probably like someone at The Athletic if you want to read that. I mean, it's like one of the best deals in sports to have a subscription to that. So definitely check that out if you don't have a subscription already.
Yeah, if you don't have a subscription to The Athletic, I don't know what you're doing. You're especially with all the deals they run. Like I know you guys were running like $1 a deal at one point, and you're always running some sort of promo. And it's the depth of writers and analysts you guys have at The Athletic is just amazing. And then the podcasts are free. So if you don't have the dollar to spend, you can go and listen to those podcasts, award-winning podcasts. And I do officially concede that you guys won the Fantasy Sports Writers Association Podcast Award. I was really, really happy for you and Eno. That was a pretty awesome honor for you guys.
Thanks, Justin. Really appreciate that. Were you working on a recount behind the scenes?
Yeah. You have to go listen to the political podcast I do with Ian Kahn, and he actually asked me after it happened whether I'd be willing to concede, and I said I would not.
The vote was stolen.
Yeah, it was not a fair election. This was rigged, all that stuff. But I'm being shoved out the doors of the nominations, and I guess agreeing that you guys won. So, Mr. Michael A. Stein, remind people where you can be reached and what you do.
I'm at Fantasy Judgment on Twitter. I provide dispute resolution services for fantasy leagues, solving any internal problems you have, like trade reviews, interpretation of rules, commissioners abusing their power, anything that's causing strife within your fantasy leagues. I will write a legal decision and help you out there. Justin, I just also wanted to, give you some props here, not just for putting together this podcast all day and raising money for great causes, but, the TGFBI is something you've done for 4 years now. And, it's such the fantasy sport industry, we've seen it grow over the years, but it's still, it's very personal, and we've all developed a lot of relationships, through social media and online. And it's nice to have everything aggregated together. And I give you a lot of credit for really, bringing together, over 400 people in the industry for common causes. And, it's nice to put faces to names when we get a chance to do this. So I appreciate all the work that you put into it. As a commissioner I've been a commissioner of leagues for 30 years since I was a kid. So I know what it's like. So you doing, 29 leagues, for this is incredible. So much to you.
Yeah, I mean, I said, I think on the last segment, like it's nice to be working with NFBC on this because I kind of give them the leagues and turn it over. And once everybody's signed up, I get to kind of wash my hands of it. So, and I don't have to do as much as maybe a traditional commissioner does. But it's a lot of fun. And, as much credit as I get, and I'm going to take that credit because I like credit. It's really about how the industry as a whole has really come together and supported it and really rallied around it, because the industry didn't have to. And so to see like a lot of big names in the industry and sites and things really go, hey, we want our people in, we want to talk about this, we want to participate in this, helps everybody, from the person who has 15 Twitter followers to the person who has 15,000. So I mean, all the credit really goes to the industry as a whole for supporting TGFBI and things like Podapolooza and PitchCon and First Pitch Florida, like all the things that go on in the industry that people can learn, but also raise money for good causes as well.
Definitely. I just wanted to pay it forward one more time. You said I won one of the raffles because I donated, but I don't want to take that. You should. I am hereby bequeathing the gift that I won, and I want you to redistribute it to somebody else.
All right, then I'm going to do.
My pleasure to do that.
I'll do that right now. So let's see, Kevin Schreitz, you have won that shirt and live draft assistance if you want. Thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate you passing it on, paying it forward a little bit there. We've got about 8-9 minutes left. Before we talk about the last player real quickly, I want to let everybody know, if you're watching this live right now, this feed is going to end. A new one is going to start. So if you're watching it on YouTube or Twitch or Facebook or Twitter, this one's going to end. A new one's going to start, and we have 2 TGFBI overall champions and 2 other gentlemen coming on the next segment. So make sure you switch over when this one ends. It's that way you don't miss any of the information. Let's talk about the last guy. That was a guy I was really high on for a number of years, kept disappointing me in Teoscar Hernandez. Had a huge breakout last year. But Mike Carter, can we believe it?
He's similar to a Rosarena in a way to me. It tantalizes me, intrigues me, makes me want to drink the Kool-Aid, but I'm not sure what he really is. I think he obviously hits the ball really hard. Barrel rate is really good. Power's also there. Might even steal some bases, but I keep going back to 2019 when he hit 230. And I worry about that. I mean, I worry that the 289 he hit last year might be a little bit inflated. The other question I have is what impact is playing in Florida this year going to have upon him? We just don't know how that's all going to work. I mean, will the Florida summer sap him when the weather really gets hot down there and humid? I don't know. It does for me every year, but I'm just an old fat guy. So that might be more having to do with me than him. But his ADP is 75. And I think I'm okay with taking him there if I already have a solid number one guy. I could see him being a 30 home run guy, 15 steals in a lineup where there's a lot of shiny new toys, and he seems like kind of the forgotten guy. I'm not sure that I'd want to take him as my number one outfielder, but I think for sure I would take him as my number two.
All right, DVR, are you buying back in on Teoscar Hernandez at the inflated price?
He's an easy pass for me because of the inflated price. I mean, a 30% K rate's a tough place to live for any hitter, even when you hit the ball as hard as Teoscar Hernandez does. The depth chart's pretty crowded, and I think one thing that works against him, he's not a good defender, and I think that could be the difference between Hernandez and Randall Grichuk and how the Jays decide who's getting playing time some days. So I think there's a little bit of playing time risk here, and usually we don't see considerable downside with playing time when we're talking about someone who goes in that top 75, top 100 overall range where Hernandez likes to go. Compared to Lourdes Gurriel, who had a nice 2020 himself and really had that breakout in 2019, I have a strong preference for Gurriel between those two players, in large part because Gurriel is a superior defender. Like, his glove keeps him on the field. With Hernandez, if he's not hitting, he's not really providing any value to this team. And I just think the depth they've built up really kind of works against him.
All right, Chief Justice Stein, what are your thoughts?
Well, DVR sort of stole a lot of my thunder there. I was absolutely going to make the points of the depth that Toronto has. Grichuk, they signed him to that long, expensive contract a couple years ago before they started acquiring all these players. And I feel like they're going to milk whatever they can get out of him. And he is an excellent defensive outfielder. So you're right with Vlad maybe playing first base or third base. He's not the greatest defender at either place. Toronto's going to have some holes, in the outfield defensively, outside of Springer. So I do feel that there may be a preference to get a better glove out there, especially with that loaded offense. Scoring runs should not be an issue for them, even in the Florida sun. So I'm in agreement. I would pass on Teoscar, at that price. Mike made a great point that you got to have at least elite number one outfielder if you're going to be taking him at that number. So at his best, he's an outfield 2, but I would probably stretch it. He's more of an outfielder 3.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we got a little less than 5 minutes left, so we're going to do some speed rounds here and see how many we can knock out. Mike Yastrzemski, DVR, you buying?
Actually, in at the price. I think the market devalues him because he's a late breakout guy. I don't think the market's accounting for some of the changes that happen in San Francisco. It's still a pitcher-friendly park, but not as extreme as before. A lot of similarities to Luke Voigt, a little less raw power, a little less around him in that lineup. But I think Yaz at the price is fine as kind of an outfield 2, outfield 3 option.
What about you, Dr. Mike Carter?
I think he's a 250 hitter with 30 home run upside, even in a crummy lineup, potentially. I think that would be fine. I like what DVR said. I totally agree.
All right. And Mr. Chief Justice Michael A. Stein, what are your thoughts on Yaz?
Well, I'll cap off the trifecta and agree with everyone else. Somebody's got to score runs and drive runs in that lineup, and why not be Yaz? So, yeah, I think that there's some legit power there. You may not get great batting average from him, but someone's got to do something in that lineup, and he's the guy. So yeah, I'm in on him too.
All right, Devin Williams won Rookie of the Year in the National League and was just an out of nowhere lights out reliever. Do you believe it, Mr. Chief Justice?
I do, but I guess the question becomes, if you're in a league that is only counting saves, yeah, his numbers are tremendous. But right now, Josh Hader is the closer, so I think Williams, his real value comes in the saves and the combination saves and holds category. His ERA was spectacular. The strikeout rates were great. Really just came out of nowhere. So I have no reason to think he can't replicate it, maybe not exactly as great as he was, because we see how volatile relievers are year to year. But, his real value is only in a league that has holds as part of the category.
All right. And then DVR, you didn't talk about Williams yet, right?
Not yet, no. I think the fastball, velo, and command are there. The airbender is one of the nastiest pitches in the game. It's really just a matter of, as Chief Justice Michael said, you're not going to draft a non-closer reliever where Devin Williams goes unless you're in a league that rewards holds or unless Josh Hader gets traded, in which case Devin Williams would be a top 5 closer in this year's pool. He would jump 100 picks at ADP if Hader were to get dealt.
I wonder about what I wonder about in that bullpen is how that really all shakes out. I mean, everybody's taking Hader as the number 1 or number 2 relief pitcher off the board, but isn't there at least a possibility that Counsell might use him as a multi-inning weapon and use Williams in the closing role? We don't know that. They're both really valuable guys, but it's league context dependent, as everyone is saying. In a league where he saves and holds, I think he's a top 10 guy. If it's just saves, I don't think you can take him at that point.
All right, last 2 guys, we're just going to say you're buying or you're selling, so that way we can move on into the next stream. Remember, if you're watching this live right now, you need to go and get into the next stream, which will still be on all the same locations, going live here in about a minute or so. So buy or sell Zach Davies, DVR.
Buy where he's going. I think people are underrating him again somehow.
All right, buy or sell Zach Davies, Mike Carter.
Buy where he's at.
All right, buy or sell, Mr. Chief Justice.
Agreed. Buy where he's at.
All right, buy or sell AL Rookie of the Year Kyle Lewis, Chief Justice.
I'm selling. I just, Seattle's a mess. I mean, I think, if they start bringing some of the kids up, Jared Kelenic is a very sore spot for me as a Mets fan, but I yearn for the day the Mets that Steve Cohen will shell out $1 billion to bring him home. But for now, I think it'll be hard for Lewis to replicate these numbers. I think you're going to see some of the other guys, take some of those at bats and numbers away from him. So I'm selling.
All right, DVR, buy or sell.
Slight sell on Lewis. I don't think he's as overpriced as Teoscar Hernandez, but there are other players I like more in that range.
What about you, Mr. Carter?
I'm out.
All right. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Remember, if you're watching this live, go to the next stream. I'm going to start it right now, and I'm going to end this broadcast. Take it easy, guys. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Justin. Great job.